public. Other than that, we're ready to get the show on the road. So our first speaker really needs no introduction. He's got over 300,000 followers on Twitter. He's a radiologist, an oncologist, and has been speaking his heart out over the last 4 years, truly about the transgressions of where we are in terms of the medical community today. Please allow me to introduce our first speaker, Dr. William Magnus.
Thank you very much, Red Deer. I'd like to thank the organizers of this event for putting accountability back on the table. I was extremely disappointed when I heard that the Injection of Truth event was postponed for reasons unknown or undisclosed. If there's something we really need right now, it's accountability. I'd also like to thank Alberta Health Services. Alberta Health Services is the reason why I'm here. Thank you, Alberta Health Services, for supporting my social media platforms. AHS has spent 9 years. AHS has spent 9 years blocking me from diagnosing and treating my cancer patients in Edmonton. They've spent over $10 million in legal fees trying to get me kicked out of Alberta and really forcing me to create a new career, which is the career of social media influencer. And so that's where I am here today. I am the most followed physician in Canada. I am one of the most followed physicians in the world. And it's all thanks to AHS. It's thanks to AHS sabotaging cancer care in Alberta and spending millions and millions of dollars on things that they shouldn't because they are above the law and they have unlimited funding. So thank you very much, AHS, for now giving me such a following that I have a larger social media following than Alberta Premier Danielle Smith. I have 10 times the engagement. I could probably run for Premier of Alberta, and when I do, and when I'm elected, I will not tell Albertans that my wings have been clipped and there's nothing I can do about anything. So I dedicate this talk to AHS, Alberta Health Services. Alberta Health Services is one of the most corrupt institutions in Canada, period. They get $26 billion from the provincial government. That is half the provincial budget, and they get it with zero accountability. Did you know when AHS was formed in 2008, they had a budget of $9 billion, and that was considered obscene at the time. $9 billion has metastasized to $26 billion now, and our health services have gotten worse every single year. That means every single politician since 2008 has given another $1 billion to this bottomless pit at AHS. There are 3,132 AHS managers, bureaucrats that collect salaries up to $700,000 a year. The average AHS manager takes home $300,000 for doing absolutely nothing. If you do the math on that, that is approximately $1 billion that we flush down the toilet every single year to pay for what I call the NDP Friends and Family Plan, because if anyone knows AHS, you know that you get into these positions by nepotism, connections, and family members. Jason Kenney in 2019 actually commissioned an AHS performance review from Ernst & Young. It cost $2 million, and this review concluded that about 2,000 of these 3,000 managers are completely useless. They could be cut from the system, and there would be absolutely no change in performance. Now, that performance review was never followed up upon. We got the end report back at the end of 2019, and we really never heard about it again. And this has happened every single time the Conservatives do a review of AHS of any kind of report, commission, and so on. It just gets finalized, it gets put on the shelf, and it's never spoken of again. That is the power of AHS. The AHS legal wastes hundreds of millions of dollars pursuing hundreds of lawsuits against Alberta citizens, against doctors, against nurses, against small businesses, and we've seen these persecutions throughout the COVID-19 pandemic. Really, the pandemic highlighted just how abusive this organization is. The persecution of Christian pastors like Pastor Arthur Pawlowski, which made us a laughingstock in places like China and North Korea. We were the Christian persecution capital of the world, and that was thanks to AHS. We have a bloated organizational structure in AHS, managers managing managers. In fact, I once was able to obtain a book. It was about 300 pages long, and it is a book of just flowcharts of the AHS organizational structure and who manages whom. 300 pages of AHS managing managers. That's the entire book. It's just this obscene management structure. And no one has made an attempt to reorganize this structure since 2013, when there was a failed attempt made, and the person put in charge of reorganization then was John Cowell, Dr. John Cowell, who Danielle Smith appointed in 2023 to oversee the reorganization of AHS now. So you take a person who failed to reorganize AHS back in 2013 to do another failed, basically a theater performance for Albertans to pretend that something was being done when nothing was being done. Now, moving on to accountability during the COVID-19 pandemic. AHS committed many crimes during the COVID-19 pandemic. I mean, I was trying to find a way to fit them all on one slide. There's just too many, so I will highlight only a few. Of course, it wasn't the only institution to commit crimes during the pandemic, but it was certainly a major one. AHS blocked all early treatments, vilified vitamin D, vilified ivermectin, vilified hydroxychloroquine, and that resulted in 5,800 deaths of Albertans from COVID-19. These were unnecessary deaths. These were preventable deaths. No one was held responsible. In fact, the AHS COVID-19 Scientific Advisory Group, ran by NDP activists like Lenora Saxinger and Braden Mans, were never held responsible for blocking early treatments and forcing Albertans onto ventilators and remdesivir, something that AHS continues to do to this day. AHS legally terrorized Alberta citizens and small businesses during the pandemic and continues to do so to this day with complete impunity. We don't hear about it. AHS implemented an illegal vaccine mandate on its 105,000 healthcare workers, pushed thousands of our top doctors, nurses, and healthcare staff into an early retirement, or pushed them out of medicine altogether. They have never brought those staff back. A few of them, willingly went back when those mandates were rescinded, but they never compensated, never brought them back. In fact, when they were imposing the illegal vaccine mandate, they were going into people's personal medical files to make sure whether you actually were vaccinated or not. All of that illegal. This was under Verna Yu, another NDP plant that was there throughout the pandemic until she got kicked out, and then she landed softly as the vice president of the University of Alberta. AHS lied about the safety of the COVID-19 vaccines in pregnant women and children. In fact, there are now documents obtained by Freedom of Information from Health Canada that proved that Health Canada never approved COVID vaccines in pregnancy in Canada. All the other health officials provincially across Canada ran with it, recommended the vaccines to pregnant women. Health Canada's got their hands clean because they have documents showing they never approved it for lack of safety studies. AHS buried hundreds of vaccine injury reports that were submitted by doctors to AHS, and then those doctors were persecuted for doing so. AHS fired thousands of top doctors, nurses, and health staff during a pandemic. No one was ever held responsible. We never had accountability at AHS. That's why AHS still does whatever the hell they want. That's why AHS still demands that new healthcare staff who are hired must have COVID-19 vaccines, believe it or not. Now, I can't just put it on all on AHS. We've got the College of Physicians and Surgeons of Alberta. The college threatened doctors to not provide informed consent to their patients when it came to the COVID-19 vaccines. This is the first time in history this has happened in Alberta, where informed consent was eliminated by the College of Physicians and Surgeons. You have a product that was experimental, and there was a memo that went out early on, the rollout of the COVID-19 vaccines, that told doctors, if you tell your patients about the risks of the vaccines, you are causing vaccine hesitancy, we will come after your medical license. So we've lost informed consent. Doctors were not allowed to tell parents that the vaccines that they were giving their kids would cause myocarditis, would cause autoimmune issues, would cause neurological problems, would cause cancer, and an increased lifetime risk of cancer in those vaccinated children, and could cause sudden death. That is absolutely unacceptable. The colleges then sabotaged the medical careers and medical licenses of doctors who stood up for their patients and supported the Hippocratic Oath, nurses. All the colleges did this. It wasn't just the College of Physicians. All the colleges persecuted and continue to persecute healthcare workers to this day. They do so with impunity because the politicians don't have the guts to stand up to the colleges and say, no more, you will not persecute the best healthcare workers that we have who got it right from the beginning. So we've got something called the Manning Report. Commissioned in early 2023 by Premier Smith, the Manning Report was to review government overreach during the pandemic. There was a report that was released in November of 2023, which gave extensive recommendations for a complete overhaul of the Health Professions Act, given the abuses that the colleges engaged in during the pandemic, as I mentioned earlier, persecuting nurses, persecuting doctors, persecuting pharmacists, persecuting healthcare staff just for doing the right thing and being ethical. There were, I think, at least 7 recommendations. And the Manning Report was never heard from again. None of those recommendations were implemented. This is 2023. We're already at the end of 2024. And now we hear from Premier Smith and NLA Avery that they're going to look into the colleges. They're going to have discussions with stakeholders, and maybe something will come out of it in legislation in the spring of 2025 or the fall of 2025. We're already years behind. This action should have been taken years ago. The colleges should have been reined in years ago. We have the reports. They can read on the Manning Report, but all we get is kicking the can down the road because there's no accountability. No one wants accountability on the table. No one's being held accountable. Not at AHS, not at the college, not at the Alberta Medical Association, not at the public health chief office, like Dina Hinshaw, when she tampered with government data and she deleted all the evidence from the government websites that showed injuries to the double vaccinated, that their immune systems were being destroyed. she deleted all that data and said, go get your booster shot. She was never held accountable. In fact, she had the good sense to run away to BC, where the NDP is going to protect her. But first, she collected a bonus for basically throwing Albertans under the bus and making sure that Albertans didn't have the data that they needed to make an informed decision. So we've got the Manning report, nothing's being done with it. Then we have the Gary Davidson report. Gary Davidson was the chief of emergency medicine here in Red Deer, and he was one of the honest doctors who came out and said back in 2021, hey, listen, AHS is lying to Albertans. The emergency rooms are empty. And AHS is telling us that the emergency rooms are overflowing with COVID patients, and they were lying, the emergency rooms were empty. When he came out and said this, he was targeted by AHS, he was targeted by the college came after his medical license. And so Premier Smith appointed him to assemble a task force to review the data that AHS relied upon during the pandemic, you know, when it came to the lockdowns, when it came to vaccine mandates, when it came to pushing, you know, vaccines on their health staff and so on. And of course, pushing vaccines on children, teenagers, pregnant women, and so on. And so he put together this task force, and he's been trying to get data from AHS, and I've been informed privately that AHS lawyers have flat out refused to give this task force any data that might incriminate AHS in wrongdoing. And so we have another task force that has no teeth. And the Davidson report was supposed to come out back in May. It's being postponed. A number of doctors have quit the task force because nothing's happening, and AHS is able to put up roadblocks and simply refuse to give the data that AHS relied upon for its decision making. So we have absolutely no transparency when it comes to AHS. So what are we doing? I mean, what are we doing in this province? We've got this $26 billion entity run by far left woke activists. I mean, they love using their pronouns, like Verna Yu always presents herself as she and her. These are far left woke activists that have run our healthcare system, and they are in every single top position in healthcare in this province. You know, I did at the Injection of Truth 1, I presented and showed the organizational structure of AHS as it looks today. Something like 12 of the 13 executive positions are held by NDP millionaires who were installed at AHS by Rachel Notley back in 2015 or 2017. It's a leftist mafia. Same thing at the college. The college is run by Michael Cafaro, installed in 2015, and Scott McLeod, installed in 2017, both of them far left activists who control the licenses of 11,000 doctors. Same thing at the Alberta Medical Association. That's why you will see the Alberta Medical Association presidents constantly attacking Danielle Smith. It's a leftist mafia. And same with the public health chief, Dr. Mark Jaffe. Dr. Mark Jaffe got his start as AHS vice president on the back of my lawsuit against AHS in 2017 by Rachel Notley. That is our public health chief. And the court has determined that the moment another lockdown is declared in Alberta, he will have full control of this province to mandate vaccines and so on. So we're going to rely on the Alberta Bill of Rights that, pardon my French, but that the courts and AHS are going to wipe their behinds with. Because none of them follow these rules, and they will certainly not follow the Alberta Bill of Rights. And if you're going to support the Alberta Bill of Rights, you better make sure that that thing has some kind of teeth. Because as far as I can see, that thing is going to be completely toothless. And we are going to be at the mercy of far leftist activists who now occupy every single healthcare position in this province. Why is that? Can conservatives not find any conservative people to come in and take over those positions? People who haven't been lifetime deep swamp creatures of the NDP or the Liberal mafia.
Yeah.
And I've been at this for 9 years. And for 9 years, I keep seeing the same people being cycled into the same top positions at AHS over and over and over again. I'm sorry, I completely digressed from my slide. So I'm trying to just kind of come back to the slide and kind of wrap things up a bit. So we've got the Ernst & Young report that says fire 2,000 AHS managers, and you probably won't even notice. I'll tell you a quick story. I was at the Cross, and I was doing my work. And here's the thing you have to know about AHS managers, because you would think that the whole system's going to fall apart, and they'll try to implode it if there's an attempted cleanup of AHS. There will be managers who will try to actually implode the healthcare system. But basically, I was happiest and most productive when my AHS managers were nowhere to be found. When they were out golfing, when they were out basically not in my department. Because when they were in my department, I was chirping over them, they were giving me more work that I didn't need. I was most productive without the 5 AHS managers that were managing me at my cancer program. Yeah, I had 5 managers for me, okay? So trust me, we can get rid of 2/3 of them and no one will even notice. And that's what we need to do. We need to purge this bureaucratic bloat at AHS. Enough is enough. And I know Albertans have had enough. I know I'm preaching to the choir. We need some courage in the political class to do this. We have the Ernst & Young performance review, which UCP can lean on to clean up AHS. We've got the Manning report, which can be used to clean up the colleges. We've got the Gary Davidson report, and I'm really curious to see what Dr. Gary Davidson has discovered in his investigation of AHS shenanigans during the pandemic. What we need is accountability. We need to hold these unelected bureaucrats accountable. We cannot move on. We cannot sweep this under the rug. Too many people have been harmed. Too many lives have been ruined. I can tell you, 6,000 dead from COVID-19, probably at least 20,000 dead from the vaccines. And I can tell you every year there are somewhere between 4,000 and 6,000 deaths of unknown cause here in Alberta, the vast majority of them due to the vaccines. AHS has buried all the vaccine injury reports. We need transparency with all the vaccine injury reports. We just need transparency at AHS. Send a team of forensic specialists into AHS and find out where every single dollar has gone. We need accountability, and we need it now. Thank you very much.
Ladies and gentlemen, Dr. William Mackis.
Standing ovation for Dr. William Mackis. Look at that.
Now, I would be remiss if I don't mention that this event was offered and very kindly sponsored by 2 organizations, and I love that multiple groups came together to put this organization, or put this event rather, together. The first one being, needs no introduction, thank you, Take Back Alberta. Rock and roll. The second organization was moved right here, the 1905 Committee. The next speaker, continuing on in the medical presentations, is Dr. Shoemaker. Now, Dr. Shoemaker is from Ontario, but I saw him wearing a button that says, I am Alberta. So we appreciate that you do that, sir. Thank you. Please come on up. Oh, there he is.
Howdy, everybody. Thanks a lot. Thank you. Thank you very much, Jared. Great to be with you all tonight, everybody. Well, I was in Toronto 24 hours ago, and I'm here tonight. It's an exciting bit of travel, and exciting time. It's October 28th. Saw something on the Twitter feed just in the last 24 hours. It was informing me that Senator Rand Paul, the United States Senator, and he's had his moments with Anthony Fauci over the last year and a half. And he is specifically releasing today, October the 28th, go and find it on your various media, both a video and a transcript of his accusations against Dr. Anthony Fauci. And I have 3 words for Dr. Fauci. You're going down. Yeah. He's going down. And Senator Rand Paul will make sure that it happens. He's not doing it out of vindictiveness. He's doing it out of truth and the desire that humans have the right to live a normal lifespan. And Dr. Fauci is the person, along with other allied people, who have interfered with that by not just allowing the COVID circumstance to surge through us as it has, without appropriate medicines being used. He has also allowed it because he literally invented the science that made the virus happen. I state that categorically in front of you all. So, with that in mind, because October the 28th is the day on which this will all be released, and it will be much more erudite than myself talking about it, do find Senator Rand Paul's film and transcript. It's coming out today. But I said the same things in a quick 2.5 minutes with Laura Lynn Tyler Thompson 2 full years ago. 2 full years ago, this video you're about to be seeing was produced by myself and Laura Lynn as my host, and we let the world know how this happened to us. If we could have that first film, please.
Why is it that the bad things are happening? Well, because the bad people were in charge at the beginning. We all know Fauci was illicit. We all know that he took the whole plan to make this virus offshore from the state. He ignored the promise that what Obama told him to begin to not do. And by 2015, everything was going. He was making it happen in Wuhan. And he and Peter Daszak were also preparing so that once the code was fully established and created over in Wuhan, it could also ship back to the States. And there's paperwork that showed that the codes that went into the aerosolized virus also were brought back to the States, given to Fauci and others. Fauci and others put it into the hands of Moderna, a company, by the way, that Fauci once had a financial interest in. And Moderna, modern RNA company, it never made another product prior to its lifetime. In its lifetime, Moderna had never made another product, but they were given, according to Dr. Martin and others, and they've done the digging. They were given the genomic thing that I would call Death Code 2015, because it was actually made in 2015. The code for the vaccine spike protein was made in 2015, and it's the same code that was put into the virus in Wuhan. And they were worked on in parallel between 2015 and 2019. That's 4 years. They had a nice little 4 years to get this whole puppy going, and an illicit, inappropriate, quotes vaccine. It's not a vaccine. It's a bio-harming agent, a T-cell killing agent, an immunity-damning agent, which does absolutely nothing useful for you as a society. Please listen to this. Please, all of us stop. Many countries have stopped. Denmark in particular has stopped. First for 18 and under, now it's 50 and under. Denmark will not give it to anyone 50 and under because of the known toxicities. So as far as I'm concerned, this puppy is over. The evidence is in. Everything I'm saying to you is honestly the truth. And the research to create the vaccine, post-vaccine, and spike protein, germ together, they were done over 4 years under the say-so of Dr. Anthony Fauci, the world's greatest traitor.
Yeah, he was the world's greatest traitor 2 years ago. We know more and more about it now. However, we have to deal with it. We're rational humans. We've learned how terrible it's been. We knew who's been part of making it. But I wish to take the next 5 or 6 minutes to speak politely and with calmness to our dear Premier here in Alberta. She is the Premier. She deserves to be the Premier. She's had strong words of responsibility and freedom of choice to speak to Albertans recently. And I take her at her word for it. I have certain concerns, as Dr. Makis has, and he's right to say that not enough has been done in as timely a manner. But I still have a strong belief in her party, and I still have a strong belief in her that she is the only chance to make Alberta into Canada's Florida. We have to start somewhere. We have to start right here with the truths, and we're doing that. So to dear Premier Smith, I say to you, this is a speech of outrage. Congratulations to you and Justice Minister Mickey Amory Thank you for outlining the need to protect self-expression for Canadians. Absolutely, and especially for professionals. Your expression of this at this time for Canada is crucial. Your actions mean that even if Bill 293 is passed by the federal government, Alberta will have the opportunity to protect its own citizens. But why am I here today? Why have I been asked to speak on such matters? I'm just a physician. I cure the sick. I try to keep them from dying too young. That's my job. I've been doing it for 45 years. Well, the hallmark of good medicine is to always keep your ears and eyes open to new or changing information. Information that would help our patient who's right in front of us. Diagnoses are always to be questioned by the practitioner. Don't assume you're right every time. If you find something that's going a little amiss and new findings, react to it. Treatments, whether they work or need to be changed, are always to be questioned. So to censor doctors in this pandemic for talking to their patients, for thinking and listening to the initiatives that are happening worldwide, of medications that are working wonderfully worldwide, why shouldn't we be impressed by such information? Why shouldn't we try to protect Canadians? That's what Dr. Bacchus, myself, and so many others have been trying to do, and will continue to try to do. But it was not politicians that actively prevented us from speaking up. They too were being fooled. They too were being fooled by the hospital systems and the medical regulators that had fooled us all around the world. Because they hid what was known. And what was known? After COVID-1, SARS, the original SARS in 2002, the whole world went to work to find out what would work if there was ever another coronavirus attack around the world. They worked on it for 10 years. And in the 10 years, they found the answer. The 3 drugs that would work marvelously and would cure 95% of people with a coronavirus infection were ivermectin, hydroxychloroquine, and interferon. Interferon's a bit complex and a bit more dangerous, so to speak, to use, but it would have been useful. But the 2 easy to use and completely safe medicines proved by medical science, DARPA and the FDA, it was all proven by 2012. And everybody sat back, well, we can be relaxed. If it ever happens, we've got something we can instantly use and stop it from expanding within our country. So you'll ask yourself, since we had 100% proof from serious scientists that ivermectin would work, what happened? Well, what happened was that moneyed people decided they wanted a lie to go through society so they could run a scam on us. And they told everyone, the medical health people, the public agency people, the politicians, and ourselves, they told all of us, do not use these medications during a declared emergency. Even though they were knowledgeable, my apologies, they were knowledgeable that all these medications, the 3 I just mentioned, were on the approved medication list of every province and territory in Canada and had been there in most instances for close to 35 years. Sitting ready to be used, proven effective, and nobody told us the truth. So, I mean, it's tough news, but it is the real truth. I'm not standing up here after 45 years in medical practice inventing a story. This is a real scientific fact. And so, Madam Premier, my request to you, it's not private, I'm making it in public, but I would talk to you in private about these things gladly. And I encourage you to consider to do what Tennessee did 2 years ago. Tennessee created a medical directive in which the legislature of Tennessee told its medical agencies, you have no more right to keep this medication from the population. The politicians had to go there. They had to take their own blinders off and state that medications that have been used safely for 35 years deserve to be used by a clear-thinking doctor or nurse practitioner or pharmacist. So in fact, the 3-page document that they created, and I have those 3 pages here, those 3 pages tell you how in a 10-minute session, of your legislature, you can write those same 3 pages of rules, and that pharmacists can dispense either ivermectin or hydroxychloroquine for the same reasons that they now dispense Paxlovid, a drug for $600 a dose or a regimen that has 22 side effects, especially to cardiac patients that are very difficult and problematic. Paxlovid is junk compared to the pure simplicity of ivermectin and hydroxychloroquine that works simply and safely. I saved my own life with ivermectin in January of 2022 because I had worked in a COVID clinic for 1.5 years. People were coughing and spitting and everything was around me. I was wearing my spacesuit, not that it made that much of a difference, but I never caught COVID in 1.5 years. My own natural immune system kept me safe from COVID. But when I got 2 shots, when I was misled, when I didn't know what I learned in January of 2022, when it was the fall of 2021 and I didn't know the facts yet about Dr. Fauci, the facts I just spoke about in that video. That's when I got my case of COVID after getting the 2 shots. 2 shots was enough, 2 shots of the COVID-19 vaccine was enough to damage my immune system enough that I caught COVID. And just like President Biden, who caught COVID 4 times after his 4 shots, and Fauci himself, who got COVID 4 times after his 4 shots. Well, I stopped at 2 shots, wisely enough. I will never get enough of those idiotic, dangerous, toxic, immune-damaging jabs, and nor should any other person, nor especially should any child in any country ever get them, because it destroys their immune system. So, medications were available, treatments were available. With the global situation out of Brussels and out of the WEF and out of Geneva and out of the horrific planning that has gone into this, it came out to every country on earth, and every country got dumb in a hurry. Australia got dumb in a hurry, Germany got dumb in a hurry, Canada got dumb in a hurry, the United States. But what can we do? We're not dumb anymore. We realize the facts. I now need to speak for just a moment about the vaccines themselves and not the treatments that were easily available. The vaccines themselves, if I could see that pink chart that you kindly put up on the board behind me, thank you. That shows that in all of 2020, on the left-hand side, in 2020, something called excess death and mortality in Canada was sitting at its normal 0 to 18%. It can sometimes, from time to time, excess mortality can go up from 0 to 10%, maybe 15% higher than the previous decades of deaths. So in 2020, pretty normal, well under 20 per 100,000. Suddenly in 2021, right in the middle of the graph, as it starts to go up on this mountainous climbing, the mountainous climbing began in March of 2021 and has ascended all the way into the middle of 2024. So now instead of a 10% elevation in excess deaths, it's a 5-fold worsening of that, 500% higher, 500%. You've gone from 10 per 100,000 up to 100 to 120 per 100,000. That is a 5-fold increase, a 5-fold increase in excess mortality. You'd never see 5-fold increases in excess mortality unless you've got nuclear bombs raining down in your country. This is real bad news to have numbers like that. And the numbers did not begin in 2020. 2020, the death rate was the same as every other year on planet Earth. And as the shots rang out, as the jabs went into our arms, the death rate went up. Percentage point by percentage point by percentage point, so that we're now at the top of that mountain, and the mountain is going to continue. The unexplained deaths, the turbo cancers, the harm to our immune system. The jabs go in and they produce basically tiny little razor blades that can go into every endothelial surface in your body. Your entire blood system, from your kidneys to your heart, to your aorta, to your brain, to your kidneys, to your baby's brain, if it's in the placenta. These injuries can go into all of them, and do go all of them, because it's an endothelial damage, which usually means the lining of your blood system is being damaged chronically. And it's just a question of where you have the greater weakness. That's where you'll have the illness. It might be a skin eruption. It might be myocarditis in a child. One other thing I need to tell you, the Premier, and everybody else. It's like a host versus transplant reaction. The proteins and the mRNAs that build these proteins, they go in there and they wave a flag and tell your body, this isn't your heart anymore. It's got some strange foreign DNA, which is certainly not John Smith's heart. Your job as an immune system is to go and attack that heart because it's not John Smith's heart. That's what the body thinks, because this is a technology that's never been used before. It's doing the opposite of what you should do if you actually have a heart transplant. When you have a heart transplant, you dampen down the immune system so that it can't overreact, and so that it can't harm you who's having to receive a foreign heart. Were any of you offered medications after your shot to dampen down your immune system if your immune system is going to attack you because they put a flag-waving RNA into your body? No, not one of you was offered that treatment, that support, that appropriate medical support if you were being given something that would make your immune system hyper. People always think you can be damaged if you have a hypoimmune or a low immune system. Well, wait a minute, you can also be damaged if your immune system is being fooled into becoming hyper and therefore going after you. And that's what's caused some of the mothers and fathers and aunts and uncles and wives and brothers and sisters of yours to be deceased already. It's caused the slow but steady immune harm to their heart and to their organs. And I'll conclude with one last short, I think it's just a 1-minute video, but before it starts, I just want to emphasize that Kevin McKernan, who's speaking here, he is the world famous scientist who literally created, annotated, and documented the Human Genome, the Human Genome Project. You might have heard about it 15 years ago. This is a scientist who was so articulate and so knowledgeable about human genetics that he was able to map the actual human genome and tell us what it was. He is now about to tell us what is happening inside the human body, because DNA, and not just RNA, DNA, the actual DNA, the map of life, is actually 1/3 of what's put into you in every shot. It was never just RNA. It was always DNA inside plasmids. And it was purposely done because the DNA would just be little fragments floating there if it was accidental. But it's DNA purposely put inside the same lipid plasmids that the RNA was put in. So the science was to put DNA that could get across the blood-brain barrier. That's the whole thing about plasmids. They can go into the ovaries, they can cross into the blood-brain barrier, they can go into the bone marrow. Places that a routine vaccine would never go. Never go. Polio vaccine would never go near your ovaries, your brain, your bone marrow. But these things do, and once they go in there, and once they contain DNA, let Kevin McKernan tell you what he found in animals.
We were quite shocked by the results. This is a person who was vaccinated 4 times by Pfizer. 1 year since vaccination, tumors emerged. Person was dead within a month. We got 3 biopsies out of them, 1 postmortem. All of them have SV40 in the origin of replication from the Pfizer vaccine. We performed some sequencing, which we're going deeper on right now, but even that preliminary sequencing shows this is in fact Pfizer's vaccine. We have enough sequence, there's sequences in there from Spike and other places. Now, what is shocking in this work is we were never expecting to find the DNA at a copy number greater than the human genome. Like if you get an insertional mutagenesis event, and that is a driver mutation, that means that tumor starts taking off. The insertional mutation should be at the same copy number as another human gene. What we were expecting to find is something where maybe 10 or 20% of the tumor actually was mutated, therefore it would come out later on PCR than our human gene. We're seeing the opposite here. This is expanded inside the patient. And that if we're getting signals in PCR that are so hot that it looks like we actually amplified the vaccine directly from the vial, and that's impossible. That means after you inject someone with 300 microliters, this person got 4, so 1.2 mLs. You should have a 64,000-fold dilution into their body. So we should see a 6 CT shift in where this PCR signal comes out from dilution alone. We don't see that. We see something where it's coming in at the same concentration as the original vial or higher. That tells us the DNA is replicating. That tells us that the origin, the mammalian origin of replication that's in Pfizer's vaccine is active in human tumors.
In other words, he's sadly telling us that these turbo cancers are happening because DNA augmentation, replication, is happening inside us. The unluckiest of us are dead already from it. And every government on earth, not just Alberta, every government on earth should ban every RNA, DNA vaccine, because all RNA vaccines are also DNA vaccines. They are. And that is the end of my message today. I appreciate you welcoming me here to Alberta and being an honorary Albertan once again. But we are all citizens of the world. We've all been lied to. Whoever is willing to have the real guts to invite a real discussion about the real science, I ask any of you to pick up the phone and give me a call. We'll sit down in 20 or 30 minutes and discuss privately with you the reasons that we should take these two approaches. Thank you, everybody.
Ladies and gentlemen, one more time, Dr. Schumann. Folks, a big thank you to the Home Church and the Legacy Center for hosting us today and their incredible team. We very much appreciate that. Could you give them a round, please? Look at this thing. Amazing. So let's get to the more interactive part of our presentation here today. So you've heard from our two speakers. So we'll start with our first Q&A session. Also, while we set up here and bring the speakers up, I was told that there are cases of those drink box water bottle thingies in the back there. So if you want to grab one, you're more than welcome. What was it? The drink box, cardboard, water bottle, recyclable things? Yeah, I don't know. One of those. Yeah. All right. So our next panel here involves both of the doctors that you just heard from. So please welcome back to the stage Dr. William Makis.
William Makis, by the way, William Makis.
Oh, William Makis. Oh, my apologies. And Dr. Shoemaker. Please come on up. I love it. I do like that they sat next to each other and you know, didn't leave that space. And you sat right next to me too, so I appreciate that very much. Thank you. Well, I've got a pair of questions for you. And Dr. Makis, I'll start with you. So AHS continues, it's your favorite. AHS continues to recommend COVID-19 vaccines for children as young as 6 months and for pregnant women. Premier Danielle Smith believes that Albertans should have the freedom to choose whether to receive mRNA vaccines. In your professional opinion, do you agree or disagree with this stance, and why?
I disagree, and I'll tell you, it's actually quite simple. If as a physician, right now I recommended a COVID vaccine for a baby as young as 6 months old, or for a pregnant woman, I would be committing medical malpractice, because there's more than enough scientific evidence of harm to show that, for example, in the VAERS reporting system, there are over 500 children who have died after taking a Pfizer or Moderna vaccine. The youngest child who died after taking a Pfizer vaccine was 5 months old. The youngest child who died after taking a Moderna vaccine was 1 year old. There are children who have died in their crib, who were discovered dead by their parents in their crib 24 hours after taking a Pfizer vaccine, 48 hours, 72 hours. There's temporal correlation in many of these cases. And as I mentioned, there are over 500 deaths, child deaths, in the VAERS reporting system. That's not to count all the cancers that I've seen in children that have had these vaccines who are now developing leukemias. They're developing glioblastomas, they're developing sarcomas. And as I mentioned, in pregnancy, I've seen many pregnant women who've had COVID vaccines suffer cardiac arrests. They've had blood clots, they've suffered miscarriages, stillbirths. They have heavy bleeding during delivery. Some of them have died during delivery, and some have died shortly after delivery, again, from blood clots. And as I mentioned earlier, there's now evidence from Freedom of Information requests that Health Canada actually never approved these vaccines for use in pregnancy because there was not enough evidence for safety. And so I would be committing medical malpractice. Now, when a politician like Premier Danielle Smith says, you know, we give parents the choice, I strongly disagree with that statement. In order to have choice in taking a pharmaceutical product, you have to have full informed consent. You have to be told all the risks and all the benefits. And right now, the colleges are preventing doctors from telling patients the risks. So you don't have informed consent. And if you don't have informed consent, you don't have choice. So Premier Smith is wrong on this, and I would strongly advise her advisors, do not say that Alberta parents have a choice. Alberta parents don't have a choice. They don't have informed consent. You're literally telling Albertans that they have a choice to inject a toxic, contaminated pharmaceutical product into their children that the doctors, Alberta doctors, are lying to parents about because they have to keep their jobs and keep their medical licenses. That's not choice.
Thank you, Dr. Marcus. Dr. Shoemaker, in your professional opinion, what immediate actions? So, like you said, we've seen the right amount of talk, and we've seen the right amount of, if you will, sentiment, but maybe not as much action as Dr. Marcus has alluded to. So in your professional opinion, what immediate actions should the Danielle Smith government take regarding AHS?
Regarding AHS, I don't feel that I should comment on that. I'm not from Alberta. Dr. Mackis is right on the truth, on the concerns. He's expressed it more than well enough. If you have a third question, I'd be able to answer that one, but I think that answer has been well dealt with by Dr. Mackis.
I like it. Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate that very much, Dr. James. Well, perhaps a question for both of you then on that note. And what we've seen over the last 4 years, how would one, here we've showed up, and again, it's an incredible amount of respect for everybody in this room. You took the time, you could have been at home, and you showed up. How does one engage with both the medical and the political community to express opinions like the ones that you've mentioned today?
How does one engage? Well, you can write letters. I wrote letters to every premier in Canada all through September, October of 2022 with the concerns and the things that we'd learned even at that point. Not a single one was answered from not a single premier in any Canadian province. But letter writing should still be done. You should still write about your loved partner or aunt or uncle who passed away 15 minutes after the jab. The lady who collapsed in Saskatchewan, dead as a doornail because she was doing her best to protect her friends and the like. But here's the deal, you can put it in your letters. The Cleveland Clinic, in a 4-month study, proved that the more jabs you got, the more you were going to get COVID. So it was all a scam because it damages your immune system and doesn't specifically protect you from COVID. You get more COVID, you get more respiratory syncytial virus, you get more of everything with a damaged immune system. So what we have to say is the jabs are hurting us. We've seen the hurt. We can't stand the hurt any longer. That's what I'd ask you to say in your letters.
And Dr. Marcus, to conclude this.
I think personal stories are extremely important, and it's important to speak out and speak out publicly. We know, for example, that a young mother, Kayla Pollock, she was paralyzed
From Ontario.
From Ontario. She was paralyzed after the booster shot, and she wasn't offered vaccine injury treatment.
Which I could have provided, or any Ontario physician could have provided if we were allowed to provide such treatments. But unfortunately, such treatments often do include ivermectin in a very specific protocol, very different from when you have COVID-19. But no doctor is doing it because, well, the people have the binders on. Back to you, William, sorry.
And imagine that, she could have been treated by Dr. Shoemaker, she could have been treated by Dr. Martrose, doctors who, kept their wits about them during the pandemic, recognized all the fraud that we were subjected to. Instead, you know what she was offered? She was offered medical assistance in dying. And she was offered that repeatedly by her doctors. Well, the story got out, and now Canadians know about her tragic story. There was a story recently about an Ontario man who was approved for MAID, and he now died. And again, he had suffered vaccine injury, again after 3 vaccines, wasn't offered any kind of treatment. However, he went to his doctors convinced him that medical assistance in dying was the way to go. It was approved, and now he has sort of proceeded with that program and ended his life. These stories need to get out. One thing I learned about my battles with AHS over the many years is that there's nothing that these corrupt healthcare bureaucrats love more than people suffering in silence and not exposing what they've done to us. So I think it's extremely important to share your stories. Your stories may be more important than you realize. You may be helping save somebody else's life. You may be helping save somebody else's child. Look at Dan Hartman. Look at Dan Hartman and how hard he is fighting for his 17-year-old boy, Sean, who died 1 month after taking the Pfizer vaccine. When I look at Dan Hartman, I say that's a parent. That is a parent. That's what all the parents should have been doing. All the parents should have been fighting for their kids that hard instead of rolling over and say, okay, fine, I'll inject my child with the 2 shots. We need to be public about our stories.
That's brilliant, important. Isn't it interesting that Dr. Makis knows so well from Alberta 2 stories from Ontario? Here I am, doctor from Ontario with my doctor colleague from Alberta. We each know about the suffering and the pain in each other's province. But I would just like to give one last message to Premier Smith. We all know about long COVID. We all think, oh, it's the people who got COVID originally, it happened to last a long time in their bodies, and then they started to get a lot of brain fog and a lot of fatigue, and maybe they got strange rashes, and they just can't get over anything. You know who gets long COVID? A person who's allowed to have a long evidence of COVID in their body. In other words, the COVID itself is allowed to last 15 days, 45 days, 95 days. It's a crummy, long, terrible COVID. Well, guess what? Dear politicians across Canada. It's untreated COVID. Treated COVID lasts 4 days. I was better in 4 days. That anecdote I was giving about myself, taking some ivermectin to save myself, the antigen test was negative for William in 4 days. I felt fine in 4 days, but I did feel horrible on days 1 and 2. And the normal light dose of ivermectin that I took to save my life also prevented me from getting long COVID because my COVID experience was short. So politicians and bureaucrats and public health folks, stop long COVID by allowing us to use appropriate medications. William and I know what the medicines are. We've said the names and the words long enough. Do you not think it should be in the actual hands of doctors who are free to prescribe it as opposed to doctors who are not free to prescribe it? Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, Dr. Makis and Dr. Schumann. Thank you, gentlemen. Now, I know that a lot of you want to engage with our panelists, and I will tell you that a few of them have to leave after the events, but many of them will be staying, and I encourage you to engage with them. And then there's also kind of a more informal social that's happening afterwards at the Red Deer Casino and Resort. So they'll be meeting out there too as well. You're more than welcome to join them if you want to after the event. So I'm curious, we talked about political engagement. Who's from Red Deer? So who's from the area? Okay, less than I thought. Who drove about an hour to get here? Incredible. Who drove 2 hours to get here? Okay, I like it. I like it. Who drove 3? More hands? I love it. Who drove 4? Incredible. And then I got 3 hands up. How many hours did you drive, sir? 4 hours? What about yourselves?
5 hours, really, from London.
5 hours from Lethbridge to come attend this event. Thank you so much for doing that. That's I love that we have questions, and I absolutely love that. It's just, I'm on a strong time crunch. We have a lot more presenters, and then we have a time that we have to give the venue back to the church. So.
You get no voice at all, the people who were just listening.
No, you definitely do, and I do strongly encourage you to engage afterwards as well. And we will, I promise you we will, right? I will, because if I open it up for you, then it's unfair, and then I gotta open it up for everybody. So I gotta keep it going. I apologize. But I promise that there will be time after the session to engage. All right, so moving forward, we've heard the medical perspective. Now let's talk about the legal perspective. So I have 3 lawyers here on the panel that I'm gonna introduce in a second. And they're gonna talk about the legalities of where we are today and what they can do. So please first welcome Ms. Lainey Roulard. She's from the Lawyers for Truth and from the Council of Alberta Lawyers. Please come on up, Lainey. Wherever you like it. The next lady I've met a number of times at different events, very, very engaged in the political community, an absolute mover and shaker from Standard, Alberta, Ms. Catherine Kowalchuk, also from the Lawyers for Truth and the Council of Alberta Lawyers. Woo! And then finally, Mr. Roger Strong. Mr. Roger, come on up. He's also from the Council of Alberta Lawyers. Thank you, sir. Have a seat.
That's a
Wonderful. And everybody's
crazy old picture.
Hairstyle's a little different. All right. So we don't have presentations. We actually have a number of questions here. Roger, I'm going to start with you, if that's all right. So the UCP government has recently announced the need to address what it views as overreach by professional organizations. They cite the example of Dr. Jordan Peterson, for example, as an example. Do you support this decision? Why or why not?
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Yeah, yes, I support this initiative. But the reason is that what the initiative is about just to bring back the regulated bodies back to their mandate under the legislation. And I'm going to share you what I experienced over the last 4 years. To start with, just give you a little bit about my background. From my accent, you can see that I'm not native speaker. I came from China. I grew up in China. I joined the party of the Communist Party 40 years ago when I was attending law school in China. But I experienced the June 4th massacre in 1989. That was a wake-up call. So I decided that I cannot live under this regime to allow my children to receive the same things I have experienced. So it took me 4 years eventually to come out of the country, and eventually I came to Canada 2000. And and then in Canada, I was transformed by the grace of God from a member of the Communist Party to a Christian. So also by the grace of God, I was given the opportunity in Canada to go back to law school, to University of Calgary Law School to attend the JD program, so I could become a lawyer at the age of 50. So all this, what I want to say this is that, but then 4 years before, back like 2020, I suddenly received an email from the Law Society, which says that every lawyers have to take a mandatory cultural training. And you have to do this training by a certain time in the form that is acceptable to the benchers. If you fail to do that by the prescribed time, you will be automatically suspended. Right? But when I took that program is not based on truth. There's no citation, there's no discussion. Right? There's a disclaimer of any academic and professional value of that program. But for this type of program, more than 10,000 lawyers are forced to take. And if they don't take, they will get suspended. So last year, more than 60 lawyers were suspended. And this year, another 40 lawyers were suspended. So when I saw this type of a notice, I think something is wrong here in Canada. Because this, now Canada, I came from, right? So I spearheaded a letter back in 2021 to have a petition for a special meeting to strike down that rules that gave the Law Society the power to impose this type of a program of indoctrination, right? And then we were defeated during the special meeting of the lawyers. But then in July last year, I and another 60 Canadian citizens, including 30 lawyers from Alberta, 60 lawyers from other provinces like Ontario, Quebec, and BC, and 26 professionals wrote a letter to the Law Society, basically raised the concern that Law Society is going too far. They just go beyond their mandate. They're using their regulatory power to engage politics, to impose mandatory cultural indoctrination. But guess what? I didn't receive any response. So eventually, last year, October, I filed my originating application against the Law Society and asked in the court to declare that those political initiatives, those rules that give the Law Society this unrestricted power to impose politics, to impose this EDI ideology is not employed, is illegal, right? So that's why I'm so pleased that last Wednesday I see that the announcement by the Alberta government, by Premier Daniel Smith and our Mr. Justice, that the government is going to rein in and start a negotiation, start a dialogue and conversation with professionals to seek the feedback from the lawyers, from other professionals like doctors on their opinion, whether their regulated body are exceeding their legislative mandate and authority. So that's why I support this initiative. Thank you. Thank you.
I've got a question for you. Sure.
Related to this, what everybody needs to understand is that 2 days after Premier Smith announced this initiative of reviewing regulatory bodies, the Law Society of Alberta wrote all of its members to tell us how much they supported it, but that they would be administering to the members a survey that they would gladly, we assume, hand to the government. So we have a situation here where a regulatory body that's under scrutiny right now wants to provide us the survey through itself and trust us to get the information back to the government. That's where we're at. So this is what they do, the manipulation behind closed doors. And so we're on it though. We've written a strongly worded letter. We need to bring this to everybody's attention because this is how it works, right? This is how they grab hold of the issue and that's how they manipulate the outcome.
Thank you. I know of a guy that used to write strongly worded letters. Catherine, so next question is for you. Considering recent court decisions that upheld COVID-19 related restrictions, what do you see as the greatest threat to individual rights today from a conservative legal perspective? And the second part of that question. Additionally, what actions, if any, can people take to protect themselves from potential government overreach? What needs to change?
Well, during COVID, Lonnie and I actually co-founded Lawyers for Truth, and we did our best to educate people about what was going on and what we thought our rights were under the Charter of Rights and Freedoms. And people would ask us, why aren't things going well? And the simple answer is this: we're raising little communists. This is what's happening. Okay? So on Canada. We are a member state, and of course, the subsidiary organizations are playing a more influential role in our country and in our province as well. We have a massive worldview crisis happening right now in the province and within our country. We used to be, or we are, or we were, I want to be, a country where we recognize the supremacy of God and the rule of law. And that was basically ignored, but it's been slowly deteriorating over the past number of decades, and more specifically, our academia, our political structures, our governments, our institutions have all been infiltrated, and it's been a slow process, but it's been very effective. And it's been so effective that right now in our primary and secondary schools, we have children believing that men can become women and women can become men. The children are continuing to be taught SOGI and Pride and other DEI initiatives in school. They're reciting and listening to land acknowledgements day in and day out. So that's number one. Number two, our universities are indoctrinated with the DEI ideology, okay? This is dangerous. We have the University of Calgary Law School and the University of Alberta Law School, who both have DEI programs and departments within the law school, where the focus of the program is to bring a DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusivity lens into research, into instruction, into all aspects of the law school experience. In addition to that, they have affirmative action policies that are discriminatory. So at U of C, if you are Indigenous or if you identify as Black or are Black, I don't even know what the difference is, but in those cases, if you fall under that category and the merit-based system, the LSAT score and whatever metric that they're using to get into law school for everybody else, if that's not met, these people have an opportunity to share their lived experience and whatever else they're going to speak about in order to be considered for admission into law school. Next, we have the Law Society of Alberta, who is completely enamored with DEI initiatives. Roger has already explained to you that recently they've incorporated a cultural competency training as a requirement to practice law. And so this is the reason why we are not seeing results. It's because these little people are indoctrinated at a very young age. They are fed this stuff in our universities, in law schools. These people become lawyers. These lawyers are fed the same BS and required thinking, indoctrination while they're practicing law, and these people become judges.
Yep.
This is the dot connection, because until we eradicate this woke mind virus from our schools and our institutions and our legal profession, nothing's going to change.
Except for the word.
Thank you.
Nothing's going to change.
Thank you, John. All right. So, number of more questions here. So, Lonnie, Premier Danielle Smith has proposed amendments to the Alberta Bill of Rights, and we just talked about this thing. To what extent might these changes strengthen Albertans' rights and protect them from potential future government overreach or violations, recognizing that what the government grants, it can also take away? What steps can Albertans take to protect themselves from further government overreach?
There we go. Can you hear me? You know what? I had a rant the other day, and I said to friend of mine who I can see in the audience a little spiel about the Bill of Rights because I was kind of in a bad mood and it was making me mad. So I'm going to read it, okay? And it's really short, don't worry, I won't keep you here all night because I have something else really important to say. But I don't know where this came from, but I think it's bang on. So that's why I cut and pasted it. It says, a governing body receives its power and legitimacy from the people through our legislation. If our system has been inverted such that our government is telling us what our rights are, is that not communism?
Mm-hmm.
Lest we forget, by recognizing the rights they define for us, we are recognizing their ability to limit or dispose of them entirely at their will. This has already happened, or the Bill of Rights would not have been contemplated in the first place. That's what I think of the Bill of Rights.
Thank you very much.
I have something else to say.
Please.
I'll go to a case, but there's a really important case I want to tell everybody about. This is in tandem with the Law Society, and I think it's a wonderful compliment of my colleagues here tonight. And just thank you everybody for being here. I want to take this a step further because I want to show what's going on in court. You don't know this individual, but there's a very brave lawyer, and she's also part of Lawyers for Truth, and she, if you can imagine it, has faced threats to her career now for 4 years at the hands of Law Society. And this is all originating from witnessing mask and vaccine notices of liability, which we've probably all seen a few of those here and there. This person has been pursued to the point where the Law Society has now set this matter down for hearing without complying with the requirements for the Legal Profession Act. So how does that happen? Well, we weren't sure, and we went to a hearing, and they made the decision that they didn't have to comply, that those requirements were not relevant. And they set the matter for hearing. We got our decision, and then we filed for judicial review with the Court of King's Bench. When we got there, I showed up at court, and the Law Society lawyer was there. She introduced herself, and we went up to the judge. And the judge looked at us and said, you know, there's a Supreme Court of Canada case, and you better go into the hallway there because I'm going to set this down for trial, which is exactly what I wanted, to show that the Law Society was not complying with the legislative requirements. And they said, go out in the hallway and discuss this because that Supreme Court of Canada case, that's going to make me set it down for trial. So go get consent from your client, speaking to the Law Society lawyer. So we went out into the hallway, and I'm not much of a cell phone person. I'm not good with electronics. So I watched and I listened. And this hallway, this lawyer went down the hallway called the Law Society, had some chats, came back, told me she had consent. The consent she had obtained was to, number one, adjourn the disciplinary hearing, and number two, to adjourn all of these matters that I had before the court into a judicial review. And we needed this because at this point in time, they didn't want to disclose the transcripts either. So how can you run a case when they won't give you the transcripts that led to the decision? That's where we were stuck. So we went into the courtroom after having agreed that we were going to adjourn the Law Society's disciplinary hearing, which was not properly constituted, and we were going to set all the matters down for a hearing for judicial review. We entered it on the record in front of the justice, and the justice accepted this. So we had our order. Number one, we're going to a hearing in the Court of King's Bench, and number two, we're adjourning the disciplinary hearing. The next morning, I got to work, and the Law Society lawyer had emailed the judge and decided that she had been told that despite advising me in writing that she had been retained to act for the Law Society, despite obtaining the Law Society's consent in the hallway of court, and despite entering the consent order onto the court record in front of the justice, and despite the justice accepting the court order, that's fine, that they were revoking half of it. And guess what? They did it. They did it. So I want to, this may seem like flat Stanley, but I want to explain the significance of this. We're now up in the Court of Appeal. We've got our appeal filed, and we met all the timelines. They put us on a fast track where our factum was due before we even had leave to appeal. And we don't have leave to appeal yet, okay? But let me put it to you this way. If leave to appeal, this case is denied, this will provide justices in Alberta with the discretion to alter, reverse, or amend a court order subsequent to court. Will it not? Because that's what's happened. And not only that, when I went to order the transcript, it was strange because all the names were flipped. It looked like I was giving myself consent. So we had to get the transcript fixed before we could even go to the Court of Appeal. And then we went to the Court of Appeal. Good thing I'm working with a really smart lawyer on this case, because we both had to write all the briefs together. We had about 2.5, 3 weeks to get them all together, filed, served. Yeah, that's the fast track rules. So I just want to let you know, because it starts with a rule, like Roger said, where they're compelling our education, and it spins forward to the point where they start compelling our values. And please beware, and this is a word of warning from myself, and from a lawyer, probably from my colleagues too, that there may come the day when you wake up and you've got a square hole problem, and you leave the house and you're looking for somebody that can fix that problem in that shape and description. But you find that all you got are triangular lawyers out there. They're not allowed to deal with you, and if they were, they're gone. So this is what we have to look at in our systems, whether we're dealing with our doctors like Dr. Makis, whether we're dealing with the lawyers who want to uphold their oaths, who are trying to, or whether we're in court trying to tell the truth and get this on record for history. But I just want you to know, yeah, the systems are coordinated. And what's ironic about what I just said is that if I look in the Code of Conduct, I'm not supposed to say this, really? I mean, I'm not supposed to speak poorly about the system, but yet, on the other hand, I have an ethical obligation to protect its integrity. And to tell you the truth, I'm at a loss and I don't know how to do it.
Thank you, Juan. I've got 3 questions I could probably compress to in the next 9 minutes. So we're going to call it 3 minutes a question, if that's possible. Catherine, I'll go back down. So Catherine, the Premier has frequently stated that her hands were tied or her wings were clipped. From a legal perspective, and Dr. Makis actually alluded to this, I love this is all tied together. From a legal perspective, what entities or institutions could hold more power than the Premier? Who is the highest elected representative of the people? Furthermore, what checks and balances are in place to protect citizens from an overreaching government or an unchecked judicial system?
Well, first of all, God, okay? God is where we derive our rights and freedoms, and government is there, or supposed to be there, to protect citizens, but not in the way of safe and effective vaccines that are not vaccines. More so, you know, from a, I would say more of a defense, a tactical defense way of defending. Danielle Smith did say that her wings were clipped at the Tucker Carlson thing event, and I was really surprised that she had said that, but not surprised. I think people who have been paying attention understand that these sorts of decisions, the decisions of who's going to be in these leadership roles, I think are coordinated at a higher level. But more to the point, we are being governed by unelected bureaucrats in Davos, Switzerland, with the United Nations, with the World Health Organization, with the World Economic Forum. And it's not only that, I had the privilege of speaking to many people, including former elected officials, who confirmed with their multiple years of experience in their legislature or parliament that it's grease. You get, the decisions are made based on the corporate lobbyists and special interest groups. And we can see that, I think, more clearly every day with the decision making and what happens generally with our courts, or sorry, with our governments. And so we have to, I I recognize that this is the way it is and the way it has been, and that's why I've been so adamant about advocating for change in a meaningful way. And it's about voting for people and bringing people into power, whatever that means, who are prepared to not live by lies. And right now, all of the elected officials, from my perspective, currently sitting are cowards, and they're compromised. And Danielle Smith, if you are listening, tell the truth. Just tell the truth. Because everything is at stake here. We have what is happening right now, and I wonder, and I put this out to the group here. Bill C-293, and I think one of your questions is coming up about Bill C-293. The Pandemic Planet Preparedness Act that has just passed Senate and the federal government. I wonder why, Danielle Smith, did your government not know that it was on the radar at the first reading, and why didn't you alert Albertans as to the concerns about the impacts of Bill C-293, and why did your government wait until after it had passed Senate to alert Albertans about exactly what could and will happen?
Thank you, Jackie. Roger. Premier Danielle Smith has spoken out against discrimination on several occasions, and we touched upon this. However, the government of Alberta job postings, such as those of Alberta Invest or the Sheriffs, continue to promote DEI hiring practices. The question is this approach just? How have legal institutions evolved to the point where selective hiring practices are now encouraged? And what would you propose as a solution?
Well, that's a great question. I think, first of all, I don't think it is right to use this criteria of DEI to select employees. And second of all, I want to share with you that this DEI, the idea, actually originated from biblical worldview, from the Word of God. Let me explain it to you. In terms of the equity, so the God's justice and mercy is the perfect combination of equity for everyone. In terms of diversity, God's creation is the perfect diversity. And in terms of the inclusiveness, God's salvation includes everyone. It's the perfect inclusion. But the problem of DEI is that they have this beautiful idea, but exclude God. If you exclude God, if you exclude the principles that recognize the supremacy of God, guess who? Guess what? Who is going to define what is diversity? What is equity? What is inclusiveness? The person who are in power. What is that? That is dictatorship. Right? Same thing is communism. That's where it came from. My dad, my parents, they were all attracted by this idea of communism. They were believing that they will build a paradise on earth under the leadership of the Chinese People's Communist Party. But what happened in reality during the 3-year period from 1959 to 1962, 35 million people in China started to die because of the literal implementation of this communism regime. Right? So that's the danger of the DEI. Right? So in terms of the solution, the solution that I can really see is that let's go back to our culture of Christianity. Let's go back to God.
Thank you, Robert.
God is freedom. God is justice. God is mercy. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Robert. All right, my final question really goes out to all three of you. So last couple of minutes here, feel free to answer it as a panel together or as a discussion. Bill C-293, which you talked about, Catherine, is currently before the Senate. The Alberta government last week requested that the Senate reconsider this bill in its current form. Could you explain how this legislation might impact Albertans, particularly in the event of another pandemic? And what actions can the Alberta government take to safeguard citizens from potential overreach by unelected global organizations?
That's a good idea.
I'm gonna start this one off because I think we're in for a surprise. I really do. I mean, think of COVID as kind of a round one, right? And in round one, what happened legally is that the government created policies that distorted the law, and then they told you that was the law, and then they had you enforce it for them because they knew it wasn't the law. Okay? We should be terrified of what's coming next, because the second time around, they're going to have laws. They're going to have paperwork. Are you going to fall for it this time? That's the question. So, I get so frustrated when I talk about this stuff. So, I want to say that round one was just about normalizing this chaotic behavior. It was about passing policies, trying to put it off as legislation, and rewiring your minds to think your rights are something that they basically discarded. It's a past, okay? Round two should terrify you, because if you looked at Bill 293, you're gonna see everything in there from tracking technology to the ability to control animal protein or non-animal protein. We're talking food supply. So basically, they got you warmed up through the first round of COVID, but now they're writing all the paperwork, as I say it, to line the litter box. And that's exactly what they're doing. So don't forget that there is a big technological piece coming in here. And it's your professionals, okay? They have just started, and the Law Society has partnered with a company called Realany, it's AI, so that when you come into an office, it's not coming into an office just yet, but let me tell you how it works. This month, they discontinued a lawyer's ability to sign things remotely. Do you think some of the lawyers are gonna like that? No, they're not gonna like that, are they? Because they gotta put their pajama bottoms in the drawer and actually put the full suit on, okay? But the thing is that now what they're gonna do is they're gonna use our professionals as a gateway. And what this means is that if you want to access professional services, you're gonna have to give up the goods. All of us are.
Your ID.
So they've started this now. They've ended the remote rule. Okay, never did that. Let's not do this. And then what they did is they introduced an authentication of ID. So if you want to sign documents in your pajama bottoms now, you're going to have to authenticate your ID through an AI software database, and the lawyer will have to do that for you. Okay? So I'm still meeting in person, getting ID in person. But how long will it be before that army has grown and the screams have grown louder and those pajama bottom lawyers do not want to leave the house? Maybe they've got agoraphobia now, okay? And basically, then we turn that little army on the rest. We tell them it's about fraud, and we force everybody to do it. And guess what? They've got your identities. And it's gonna be like that everywhere. It's coming. It's coming. So keep that in mind as well.
Well,
We've just got a couple more minutes, Catherine, so if we
just
could
to
wrap
top it
up.
up, last month, or in September of this year, the United Nations, all 193 countries ratified or affirmed with the Pact of the Future, a document accelerating the Sustainable Development Goals implementation. So they are ready to turbocharge this. In addition, they have a big digital component to this, which includes the managing, of course, and protection of misinformation, disinformation, and all the rest of this nonsense. And that's what you're seeing with the other pieces of legislation that Trudeau and the NDP federally have brought in, including Bill C-4, Bill C, I think 63, or the Online Harms Act, so-called Online Harms Act, where they're strengthening the furthering the definition of what is a hate crime. And Bill C4, if you don't know, is the conversion therapy bill, where if you are a professional, and I think it will be taken as far as if you are a parent and you refuse to affirm your child, then you can also go to jail. So that's what we have to look forward to as well.
All right. Thank you very much. Roger, anything to add before we conclude?
Yes, the last thing I want to add is that under the 1982 Charter, Constitution Act of Canada, and under the common law, the foundation to a free and democratic society is the principles that recognize the supremacy of God and the rule of law. So let's go back to that foundation. Thank you.
Yeah, and let's start it in our schools.
Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, our legal panel today, Lonnie, Catherine, and Roger. Wonderful. Thank you so very much. So we go from our legal panel to our legislative panel, and I'm exceptionally excited to introduce the next group of speakers. They are names that you will know, but some of them I met for the first time today, and some I consider personal friends. So we'll start with that. This gentleman I consider a mentor, a personal friend, really a confidant, and has been forever a supporter of mine. You know his name. He's a very successful businessman. He was the MLA and original Wild Rose MLA for Cypress Hills, Medicine Hat, and he really represented his community, Mr. Drew Barnes. Thank you, sir. The next gentleman is really after my own heart. He's a farmer, he's a rancher, but he's also a pilot too, an ag pilot. He was the MLA for Drumheller, Three Hills, and he was an MLA as well, almost about the same term, 2012 to 2019. Mr. Rick Strankman is this. He tells me, call me Stranks. Thank you. And we talked about the law, let's talk about law enforcement. The next gentleman was a police officer for 23 years with Calgary Police, and then served for 15 years as an MP. Originally started with the Reform Party, and please welcome Mr. Art Hagan. This is a powerhouse panel. I'm excited about this. Alrighty, so I have a number of questions here. I'm going to start with Mr. Barnes. Drew, the Premier and the UCP Board have repeatedly stated that they have not had sufficient time to enact legislation on parental rights, trans issues, or the Alberta Bill of Rights. However, groups like the 1905 Committee argue that this delay reflects a lack of political will rather than process limitations. Given that the Sovereignty Within Canada Act was passed within months, how much truth is there to this claim? And I've got 3 follow-up questions. What are the steps involved in creating legislation? How quickly can the legislation be enacted? And what factors are essential for accelerating the legislative process?
Chair, thank you for that question, and thanks to everybody for being here. I'm very, very grateful to have represented Cypress Medicine Hat for 11 years and to be one of the paid people that was your voice in the legislature. I'm so glad, especially tonight here, to see so many conservatives, constitutional conservatives, family conservatives, Alberta First conservatives, smaller government conservatives. But you know what I don't see here tonight? Is what when I read the Globe and Mail last night, they told me I would see here. Right-wing fringe. Chronic complainers, and forever in opposition. I am so pleased that you people are here to spend your time, your ideas, and your talent to make Alberta better for each and every one of us. Thank you very, very much. She's absolutely wrong on that. First of all, politically, the conventional wisdom is you do your heavy lifting in the first year. Stuff that maybe need to be explained later, flushed out with some regulation changes. have your MLAs go out and make things happen. She's fearful and she's not gonna do these things. Secondly, all it takes, let's be clear, 4 steps to a bill. First reading, which is automatic to get it on the floor generally. Second reading, which is about the intent. Committee of the whole, where you make all the amendments and the changes. And then the third and final reading. Okay, all that you need by law is a 24-hour break on either side of committee of the whole. You can even get around that if you can get unanimous appeal in the legislature. Now, with opposition, that might be hard, but it's 24 hours. So every bit of this legislation could have been prepared and done and implemented already. So Premier Smith, you know, you were elected. You were elected to bring a smaller government, lower taxes, choice in our healthcare and our education. You were especially elected to stand up to fight for us for a fairer deal from Ottawa. It is past time to get going.
Thank you very much. Follow-up question to that. How many taxes have been reduced, Mr. Burns, so far?
Zero taxes have been reduced. You know, it's saddening for me that I was elected in 2012 on the idea of smaller government, lower taxes, families first, bigger families, decentralization, bigger communities. Rachel Notley and Justin Trudeau raised our taxes in 2015, making Alberta one of the least competitive tax environments in all of North America now. 2 years of Danielle Smith, 4 years of Jason Kenney, 6 years of UCP government, and here we spend our time raising land title rates, raising fees, everything but reducing taxes and reducing spending. And it's a bigger problem when it comes back to COVID, but the COVID response, and I'll get there as well. Thank you.
Right on. Thank you, Jim. I apologize, Mr. Strankman. I got the, I relied on my memory rather than on my notes. I got the name of the riding wrong. I said Drumheller Three Hills, it's Drumheller Stettler, so my apologies. Rick, in your opinion, how has the current UCP government under Premier Danielle Smith differed from the previous administration led by Jason Kenney? Do you believe the UCP is moving in the right direction under its current leadership, or does it need to refocus its priorities? If so, in what ways?
Well, I'd like to add to what Drew talked about, the government and costs and stuff. Drew is well more familiar with the actual numbers, but I'll just say that the provincial debt is at historic levels. Drew can give you the exact numbers. It's north of 100 billion, probably 120 billion. And that's even higher than in adjusted dollars to what Ralph Klein was elected to fight. In many ways, a lot of people in the legislature or the associated areas there want to preach or aspire to be like Mr. Klein in slaying the debt or feeling that they have lifetime jobs in the elected positions, but it's not to be. And ultimately, Albertans, you are the ones that have to pay those bills. And that's one of the things that I think they're falling down on. They're trying to patronize or pander to a lot of organizations that really Albertans themselves should be able to look after.
Awesome, thank you. And Drew, you had mentioned you people come out here. I thought we can't say that anymore. I thought that gets you canceled. Only kidding. All right. We put this question to the legal panel, but based on your experience within government, the Premier has often said, again, her wings are clipped. How would you respond to that? What entity or institution holds more power than the Premier, the highest elected representative in the province?
Well, that's a question really that I had to say that was first and foremost on my mind when I ran back in 1993 for the Reform Party. What am I running for, and what is my authority? And I realized that after I was nominated and elected, that there was a set of policies that we had developed here in Alberta that spelled out clearly what the people of Alberta wanted us to deliver to Ottawa. Now, I know this is Ottawa I'm talking to, and it's not the province, and it's not directly related to the question you asked me, but I'm going to say this. Because our policies were so common sense, I didn't think they would pack much punch when we got to Ottawa. But as it turned out, they were extremely controversial. I don't care which one you looked at, whether it's immigration, or whether it's lowering taxes, or smaller government, very key fundamental values. LGBTQ was a huge issue, and those were matters that came out of the hearts and minds of people here in Alberta. Now, I end up in Ottawa, and nobody tells you how to be an MP in a way, but if you're committed to a process to make a difference and to determine what's wrong, if there is something wrong, ferret out what is wrong and correct it. And I soon found out that this authority that I was given when I was sworn into office was exactly what was the problem with my approach to matters in Ottawa. In other words, I'm given authority as one of the individuals that is in a position, very unique position in the country, that allows me to go to places and ask questions and dig around to find out what other problems there are. I'm given that authority when I swear to that office in reference to those people that put me there. Now, I soon found out that that was controversial in itself. They didn't want me to go around and dig into the back rooms or find out what is wrong, or to stand up for a principle that was important to the people here. But the authority is given, and that goes back to the Premier. She has got the top authority granted to her in this province. Top. There is nothing higher. She has got it. And in my way of thinking, if you have that authority, then use it for the benefit of those that are seeking to give you that position. She has not done that. I do not understand if she was to take that, even in spite of the opposition within. I don't care if it's the bureaucrats or if it's the internal workings of the caucus or whoever it is, or AHS, if you want to call it that, as an entity of our province. I've never voted for having some corporation run my life, but they do. And if that is the case, why doesn't she stand up and say, look, here is my problem to the people of Alberta. To the people of Alberta, here is the problem. We've got an internal issue here that needs your support. And I would have to suggest that there would be a rallying cry for many, many Albertans that would get her over that bump. And do it. You have to have the will to do it. You have to have the will. If she doesn't have the will, or she doesn't have the moral motivation, then it's not going to get done. And so you have to put pressure on her. So that's my position. As I see it, from my position here is a former MP and now a citizen of this province still.
Thank you, Mr. Hager. I like this next question. Because it's wide open. And there's three very patriotic Albertans here, but there's a room full of patriotic Albertans. And in a few days here, a couple of miles from here, we're going to see a big movement of political engagement. So 5,600 registrations, the biggest EGM in political history in Canada. And that goes to show kind of how engaged we are as Albertans. I love that. So the EGM's coming up. What three specific actions, I'll start with you, Mr. Burns. What three specific actions would you like to see the Danielle Smith government take immediately, with timelines, to create a stronger and freer Alberta?
Chair, only 3 is very unfair, but I'm going to try. Easy first step. Number 1, we collect our own taxes starting right away. One of the things you may remember during the COVID outbreak was Premier Kennedy at the time saying to the media, because as Rick Strankman just pointed out, we had run $120 billion into debt, and the way the economy was shut down, that if we didn't follow Ottawa, they wouldn't buy our bonds. Friends, here we are with the 3rd biggest oil reserve in the world, the ability to produce agriculture like nobody can, and we're letting the Laurentian League tell us how to protect our families. Number 1 thing, we collect our own taxes. We will make money collecting it because of the interest and penalties charged, and we will control our own future. Number 2, our written Alberta Constitution. Okay, absolutely, we have to put the rules down the next time something like COVID happens, or the government wants to create a program that's outside their mandate of health and education. They need 3 votes in the legislature where all MLAs actually stand up and are accounted for. And those MLAs will be subject to recall and more direct democracy and those 2 things. And the 3rd thing, Jason Kennedy asked me to be on the Fair Deal panel, a panel that I believed the report was never meant to do anything other than a release valve. I put out a dissenting report. I said 2 years from the day that this report is released, we need an independence referendum in Alberta. So much is broken in our relationship with Ottawa. Where do we start? So I said, let's put Ottawa on the list. They've got 2 years to fix everything they can. And 2 years from now, Albertans will hold them accountable to whether or not they've gone far enough. Yeah. Part of that is what a lot of people don't even realize. Prince Edward Island and Maritimes are guaranteed so many House of Commons seats because they're guaranteed so many Senate seats. It gives them way more power. A vote in Prince Edward Island is like 4 times a vote in Alberta. But maybe worse, 9 Supreme Court judges. Because of our Constitution, Quebec's guaranteed 3, Ontario's guaranteed 3, Maritimes are guaranteed 1, BC's guaranteed 1. Alberta, Manitoba, and Saskatchewan split the last 9th one on a rotating basis. Friends, this is so time to change this, or our values will never get to where they need to be. Those are the 3 things: collect our own taxes, our own constitution, and an independence referendum.
You said I'm going to ask you that exact question. So, yeah.
I'd just like to add to Finance Minister Barnes here. It was staggering for me to hear the previous ladies here, lawyers, talk about, I'm going to say the word anarchy in your legal system. It's anarchy if they're not following their own rules. That's exactly what that is. You've lost the law. And to Roger's comment there about under God and the rule of law. Under God, if you follow the American Declaration of Independence, it talks about the rights of the person. Those rights are not for negotiation by 2 lawyers, even if it is these 2 ladies over here. Those rights are inherent to that person. And that's, sir, if I could say, Roger, is why you're here. You should have went to the US, but you made a good second choice. And that's what, if Albertans would take that thing, following Mr. Barnes' recommendation for this declaration, based off God and the rights of Albertans. I changed my swearing in, my very first swearing in at the legislature. They want you to swear allegiance to the Queen at the time, and to the legislature, and to the constituents. And I added, and the young guy that was coaching me on this says, oh, Strengths, you can't do that. I said, I've been kicked out of worse places, and this is if I do, what are we going to do? But I added, and indeed, all Albertans.
I love it.
And that's what I'm looking at out here. All Albertans. You need to stand up for your rights, and when you see your MP or your MLA in the grocery store or wherever, tell them your opinion. And if they don't take it back to the nut house there, Nimitum, then you need to tell them it again.
I love it. Strengths, I'm going to ask you the same question then. 3 things you'd like to see Premier Smith do this week.
Well, I expended myself here. I guess I'll say, you know, I think the debt is important. I mean, it's long-term, and it gave Mr. Klein in the day a goal. Like, what are you seeing as a goal for this government? Like, I don't see any one single goal. It's pandering to this, or they're pandering to some sort of a drug rehab center somewhere else. I mean, those are not unneeded. That's for sure, they're needed. But what's the flavor of the day? Pick a goal, pick a place. It may not be popular. Ralph wasn't popular in the day either, but we love the guy because he went to a flag, or he went to the true north, and let's do that.
Thank you very much. And then finally, Mr. Hager. I'll go from this week to this month. What 3 specific actions would you like to see the Danielle Smith government take immediately to create a stronger and freer Alberta?
She should begin, first of all, by declaring to the people in Alberta that the burdens that were laid down on the backs of the taxpayer here are going to be lifted. We're going to cut the size of government down to a point where it's just looking after the very basic needs that Albertans have, and get away from interfering with the economic, just lay the economic bed down for them to do and produce things as they should. Albertans are smart people. They can do things quite well, and we excel in everything we do. Get out of our schools, get out of our, with this LGBTQ garbage and the PEI. These are things that she can do. There's nothing stopping her from doing it, apart from the fact that she may not have the will, or she fears what might come back against her from certain special interest groups. Special interest groups are always, for the most part, funded by the government themselves, or big unions. And that has got to stop. And with a leadership in the government, with the premier and on downward in the cabinet and so on, these things can be cleaned up. All you have to have is the will to do it. And the third thing, our bread and butter has come from the energy industry in this province that has fed our families, that has brought about innovation, that has made us a world-class oil industry, energy industry, recognized all over the world. Get the heck out of that industry and allow our people to do what they do best. Yeah. And I think that can happen. There's no reason why we have to go into this carbon capture nonsense. It's a lie. More than one gender is a lie. It's a man and a woman only. Under God, God created us that way. I believe it. I truly believe that. There's no other third gender or fourth or 65 other genders. Whatever the number is now, I think it's in the hundreds. But this is just nonsense. It's nonsense, and it's distracting, and it's hurting our people. I think that she could take these initiatives, and if she's determined, she will have the support of these people here. I know it. I believe it with my heart. So I would urge her, I would pray that she does this, to stand up for the truth. Don't go up lying to the people, but tell them the truth. And the truth actually will gain her more support than any one thing else that she could ever do.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Andrew. And finally, closing remarks, Mr. Barnes.
First of all, special thanks to you, Tarek, for your good work tonight in moderating. Special thanks to everybody that's here with their ideas and their time and their treasure. Take Back Alberta, the 1905 committee, and all those others. Thanks so much for pushing so hard to keep our grassroots initiatives and our true conservative values alive. Jarek, I'm sorry, I said I was gonna have trouble keeping it to just 3, but I got 3 more.
Go for it.
We have got to decentralize healthcare again. We have got to end this big monopoly. I'm an elected representative sending letters to the College of Physicians and Surgeons from Health Canada and Alberta Health Services about COVID, explaining restrictions, explaining why these tests are so faulty, why we can't use the chemicals that the 2 great doctors talked about. I got 0 responses to my letters. I represented 45,000 people and I got 0 responses. I believe if I could have walked into the Medicine Hat Hospital in the days when we had a CEO and we had good people, I could have got better understanding. At the very least, I could have helped my citizens understand a little bit better about what was going on. At the same time, we decentralized healthcare. We created a new college board. You don't have to join the College of Physicians and Surgeons. You can join a parallel board. You can start, let's make something so that we're conservatives. Smaller government, lower taxes and choice. Let's make it happen.
Ladies and gentlemen, our legislative panel, Mr. Hanger, Mrs. Bergman, and Mr. Barnes. This is our final segment. This one's the one we're going to have a lot of fun with. So we have a panel of commentators here, and really activists in the political spectrum in Alberta. You'll know these things, they're fire starters, they're you-know-what disturbers, and we're here to have them here today. I can't say it. Not in this building, not in this building.
All right.
The first gentleman needs no introduction. He is the force behind Take Back Alberta, has run meeting after meeting after meeting, engaging Albertans, encouraging them to engage in the democratic process. Coming off being a tour manager with Tucker Carlson, please welcome Mr. David Parker. He's also a Red Deer local. The next gentleman calls me Alberta's biggest troublemaker, and I say, cowboy, it takes one to know one. He is part of the original Coots protest crew. He's also a former city councillor from Fort Macleod, Mr. Marco Van Hugenbos. The next gentleman just hit 100,000 followers on X. He is a commentator, he's an engineer, retired now, father of 4, an outdoorsman. You might know him as Marty Up North, the unacceptable fact checker. I know him as Martin Belanger. Come on up here. The only lady on the panel here is a 2-time candidate for the PPC, a registered financial and investment planner, but she's also the founder of the 1905 committee, Ms. Nadine Wowo. And then I love this, because we have a current member of the UCP board. He's a businessman. He lives in Calgary. I've met him a couple of times, highly engaged in the political scene, and he's the Calgary director of the United Conservative Party. He's got a big week ahead of him as the AGM comes up, Mr. Peter Wickler. And then the moderator, so I'm not moderating this one, the moderator of this panel is really the force behind, let's keep this event on the rails. Let's get it on track. He's been running meetings in the background hard over the last couple of weeks. He's a veteran. He sued the Department of Defense to make sure that the Marines actually don't lose their benefits or don't get kicked out of the military because of them refusing the vaccine. He now works as a political consultant with over 300 Conservative politicians in the UK, Canada, and the US, Mr. Cameron Davis.
Wow.
got some quick questions. All 5 of these individuals are extraordinarily active in ensuring that your voices are heard and ensuring that government tyranny doesn't get out of hand, and that we stand up and we make sure that they know exactly how we feel about it and we do something about it. So I want to thank the 5 up here for doing that and all of their participation in making sure the grassroots voices across Alberta are heard. My first question is going to go to Peter. Peter, as a member of the UCP executive, you have a unique vantage point within the organization. If you had the opportunity to implement 3 key changes that could strengthen the party today, what would they be?
Just 3.
We'll come back to you if we have more time, but 3 for now.
At any rate, yeah, I thought about this, and being a regional director, you're involved with a bunch of CAs. And what I've seen when we first had our campaign for the re-election, I saw engagement with MLAs, with the CAs, and it looked like we were a happy family. But since then, what I've seen is a lot of disappointment. And I'd like to see some changes where MLAs actually really engage with CAs, and especially with the orphan ones. Recently, an event was planned in one of the CAs, and literally less than 2 weeks before the event was to happen, it was an orphan CA. The EA for the MLA minister phoned and said, well, we won't be able to make it now. So they had to cancel the event. You know, those things happen, you know, ministers especially are busy, but I was surprised by the response, which I've seen, when the EA offered, you know, MLAs really don't like to deal with CAs. Really? Yeah, yeah, and that's not a surprise, but it happens. They move up there, and this isn't typical of all MLAs, as you all know. But I'm surprised that still continues, and that disengagement, that's disappointing. Now, a second thing that is near and dear to me as an Albertan is what's been repeated over and over here is this thing called fiscal responsibility. Since the beginning, I didn't understand why we have a new government, but we have more ministers than ever. And we have a bigger budget than ever. I don't understand that. You've heard Dr. Makis talk about that report on AHS. Maybe if we just addressed that and got rid of 2,000 excess managers, there could be a big change. And I heard a good suggestion, and I won't direct it where I got it from, but you know, we don't seem to have that impetus to do it. We don't know how to get it done, but you might remember there was a guy in the States that we all hear about who took over Twitter and got rid of 80% of the staff overnight. I kind of think if we said, here's a report from E&Y, AHS, do you think you could come up for a bit? Yeah. What do you think? So then the other thing, and you've heard this over and over, what I've witnessed and what's really been disappointing is this thing called political will. And where it's been disappointing for me is because I'm here because of what I believe a lot of us are here for is this so-called mRNA process. I don't understand why we can't stand up and do something. It's brought up over and over, you've heard the responses. It doesn't make any sense. We know the evidence is there. It is a kill shot. Yep. I don't understand that. It takes political will. And I think if we have the political will we garner more support throughout the province. That's your free Peter. Now the other thing that you got more is I've got, well, the political will, I got 3 things. I gotta get it. And I'm going to bring this up, and this is one that is really upsetting to me. We've heard the things that were an issue in Chestermere. We heard issues that happened in Cochrane, which really, really bothered me. And they're directed at a Minister of Urban Affairs. And for some reason, this government wants to protect this individual. I'm not asking much. I just like that investigated. The other thing that's been really disappointing to me is that we all know, and it was in the press recently, and I don't know where it was, but somebody, it looks like committed murder. They're out in 2 days on bail. But we've had people down at Coutts for 2 years. I think in that 2 years, we could have done something. And I think it's all underlined in letters, political will.
Well, you've heard a lot about political will tonight, so I'd be remiss if I didn't ask each of you some specific questions on that. I'm going to start with Nadine, because I think you've been running around and asking tough questions. And I don't know, are you supported by the WEF? Do you want to get that one?
I'm most definitely WEF. Although I have to say, Peter, you're probably going to be more unpopular tomorrow with UCP than me.
So I mean, my real question to you, though, is you've been very vocal about your views on Danielle Smith's leadership in particular. And some have speculated for several months now that you may want to see her removed as premier. How do you respond to that perception?
Well, first and foremost, 1905 committee has never advocated for the removal of the premier. There's an awful lot of talk about accountability. Unfortunately, we just weren't seeing a lot of action being taken. And so the 1905 thought that, you know, if you're going to make a promise, then you should keep a promise. And that's what we've been pushing forward. Like, you know, Mr. Drew Barr, Mr. Arkanger, Dr. Mackes, you know, talked about, said, you need some courage in the political class. I wasn't seeing any courage in the political class. And one thing that I've learned in politics in my short little foray has been politicians only respond to public pressure. Asking nicely with a pretty please does not work. So I'm going to ask each and every one of the people who are attending the AGM, I'm not going to tell you how to vote. That is none of my business. Although there are groups out there, the cheerleading Danielle Smith squad, that are telling people how to vote. I've never done that. We've never done that. I think that's an insult to you. And here's the thing, vote your conscience. If you believe she's doing a good job, vote yes. If you believe she's doing a poor job, vote no. Unfortunately, that's their rules. There's no sliding scale here. It's either a yes or a no. So here's the thing though, I see a lot of fear. A lot of people come at this from a place of fear. Comments like, there is no one else. Do you honestly believe there is no one else? Heaven forbid that something should happen to Danielle Smith tomorrow. There's no one else who can lead this province. That's the wrong way to approach things. We have to vote, demand what we want, right? That's the only way we get what we want. So our goal is to hold Premier Smith accountable to the true conservative values, the true conservative principles that she was actually elected and has a very strong mandate to do, and just is failing to do so. And we've spoken out in those areas where we feel that she's demonstrated poor judgment and or needs a course correction. Our role is to provide the critical oversight, I think, to somewhat Peter's point, the inner circle should be providing, instead of just simply patting her on the back and telling her what a good job she's doing. And I would have to say that with nearly 6,000 people attending this AGM, the 1905 has had some success, I think, at engaging the citizens of this province and bringing forth and foremost the issues that are important to them.
Thank you. You're not afraid of that microphone. So my next question is going to be to Marty. It's not next in the line. It's just, I think this is a great follow-up. So to Nadine's point, Marty, you voiced concerns about Alberta's placing too much faith in one individual leader. And if I recall, having been involved in the unification of the Wild Rose and PC parties to form the United Conservative Party, there was a sense that Jason Kenney was going to come back and solve Alberta's problems and rescue us from the NDP. That was a generalized sentiment at that point in time. And you voiced concerns that Albertans place too much faith in one individual leader. What do you believe is the best approach to ensuring both strong leadership and a balanced and resilient government?
Yeah, well, it's doing this. Actually, let me tell you a quick story. So, you know, Tariq pointed out, online I'm known as Marty of the North, unacceptable fact checker. So, unacceptable is because of the last 4 years. You know, people are trying to silence me and people like us, and they use all sorts of labels, so we make fun of them, and I call myself unacceptable. Fact checker is actually what I do every day. I'm an engineer by training. I learned a long, long time ago, you know, question everything. And so, and lately, you're right, I've been, I'll get to your question, but I've been critical of Danielle. And it's cost me online. It's really, you know, I believe, like Nadine, like everybody here, that we need to elect people and we need to hold them accountable. They need to do what they're telling us they're going to do or what we're asking them to do. And, you know, everybody knows me as holding the Liberals accountable because I'm right-wing. Sure, but do you think that because somebody's political stripes are different than the Liberals that I'm not going to hold them accountable? No, I'm going to continue to hold them accountable. And I'm telling you right now, that's difficult. I'm surprised at how difficult that is, at the amount of pushback I'm getting from my followers.
Well, if you ask questions, you must vote for Mitch.
Yeah, no, I hear that all the time.
How dare you ask a question?
Absolutely. My followers, I'm losing followers, and people will say to me like weird things like, I agree with you on 99% of the stuff you talked about, but your stance against Danielle, that's where I draw the line. And then they'll block me or unfollow me. And I'm like, that's insane. And so, you know, back to your original question, that's how we get good leaders. I gotta hold them accountable. I gotta question. Actually, I come from the private sector. I mean, one thing I don't like about politics is that politics is a popularity contest. I wish that, you know, there was an opportunity. Well, we actually have that opportunity, but every politician should have that recall theater, right? Like, perform, do. If you tell us you're going to be technical and competent, then do it. And if you don't, then face the wrath of being recalled. Yeah. I can go on.
Thank you. Marco, you're pretty vocal about a lot of things. Some people don't like it too much, but that's why I'm probably attack on each other. Marco, you've been open about your decision not to support Smith in the upcoming leadership review vote. Now, I'm very curious, given your previous strong support for her campaign, what factors have led to that shift in your opinion? And now, just for the audience, this is an accountability panel. We're asking tough questions. We're not here to cheerlead, and some may, I'm not telling you what to say. But I'm curious what led to that shift, because at one point in time, I think everybody on the stage either campaigned for or supported in some way, shape, or form both Jason Kenney and Danielle Smith, and our opinions have shifted potentially, and I'm curious to know why.
Yeah, so I was one of those people that really got on the Smith train, and not necessarily the individual. I got behind truth. I got behind the campaign that was going to deliver transparency. The campaign that was going to talk about the facts of the last couple of years. The campaign that was going to address the biggest hurt, pain, confusion, and government overreach that Albertans had ever dealt with in generations, or ever, period. I got behind a campaign that was focused on accountability, promises of a full review into the Alberta government's handling of the COVID pandemic. That's the campaign I got behind. That's the person, and the person who made those promises and the team that made that promises was the Smith team. I remember clearly the Travis Page campaign being reluctant to say they would never lock down Albertans again. That was one of the key things that I jumped ship. I was initially supporting the Travis Taste campaign. In the beginning, I thought, you know, he's saying all the right things, but very quickly I realized that there was too big of a connection to the current or the outgoing administration and a failure to communicate to Albertans what we were looking to hear. The Albertans that have been hurt, that have been confused for years now in relation to inconsistent emergency measures, all the pain and suffering, etc. So that's the training that I jumped on board. That's the Smith training. It would have led to, her campaign would have led to a Rolf Klein style government that we've seen in the past decade. Unfortunately, that train never reached the station. So people ask me, where did you jump off, or where did she lose my support? Well, it's very clear. She promised accountability. She promised transparency. She promised truth on the issues that tens of thousands of Albertans were dealing with and had dealt with on a personal level. The hurt, the pain, the suffering. And I'll never stop talking about that hurt, that pain, and that suffering. The reason why is because it's still happening in today's Alberta. It's not gone. So it wasn't even a particular decision at a particular time. It was something that I've seen happen very quickly. Very quickly, the desire to follow through on those commitments and those promises were gone. We're not going to talk about it. Now, there's a grace period, right? You got to give the government, you got to give a leader the time to get their feet underneath them, to become acquainted. I think Smith jumped in to some degree. She had previous legislative experience, but if there was a moment of time, if there was a time where I realized that things were not transpiring the way that we thought they would have, that the UCP members, that the Albertans and the supporters of Smith were expecting, it was a comment, and it was a very clear comment that was made to me by one of her people, who is still part of her team. We're still in the Premier's office. And I've said, some of you may know this comment, you may know it's coming, but it was very clear to me that things were not well in Edmonton, and that the promises and the commitments that were made to us were forgotten or conveniently shuffled to the side. And it's I got to think about this comment, but it went like this, and it was part of a bigger conversation. But it was a conversation where I was expressing concern, and this is what I got to hear. It was, Marco, what gets you to the top doesn't keep you at the top. Now, that interpretation, David chuckles. David knows exactly who said it and how he said it. He's probably heard it a few times himself. That was very clear to me, that things had changed, that they were now at the top, and how they got to the top wasn't the government, the style of government that they were going to run, or that they were going to implement it. So it's been a bit of a learning curve. It's been a bit of at times, denial, frustration, anger, you name it. But the way I see it is, they made commitments. This government, this leader, her team, they promised Albertans accountability. And we have not seen that accountability yet. Every panelist has talked about this accountability. Dr. Mack has talked about it in relation to the ministry and the massive legitimate mafia in this province that has caused the most pain, hurt, suffering we've ever seen. And that's why I can no longer support Smith. Thank you.
Thank you. That was a full answer. So, David Parker here, I'm no stranger to being on stages like this. You were a voice in the wilderness for some time, leading the charge against the mandates and COVID lockdowns during Jason Kenney's tenure. And I know that you played a pivotal role in getting him elected. And there was a point in time where you know, you were probably one of his most ardent supporters. Now I'm curious, you've also been a strong advocate for Danielle Smith, and you were quite involved in her leadership campaign, as was I. And how do you respond to those who feel that she's the only viable option? There's no one else to lead Alberta. How do you feel about that kind of commentary? And in particular, when the comparisons are made, well, if not Danielle, then you're voting for Nenshi, or then who? Or you're voting for Nenshi. We've heard that a lot over the last several months. I personally attended over 6 town halls, and it comes up at each one. And after the second one, I started to think, well, maybe this is a
bit of a deflection from answering the tough questions. When someone tells me that if I'm the only choice, then I'm starting to wonder why are you wanting to answer the question. So I'm curious to know what your thoughts are on that.
Well, I'm gonna be honest, I'm just massively disappointed, really what it comes down to. And it's not actually so much with Danielle, it's with the people of Alberta. Because I did 300 meetings. I spoke from 300 different stages and multiple times. We're talking probably at least 50% of the time, I got asked, why do you support Danielle Smith? Right, there are people who hated Danielle Smith in the crowd. And every single time I said, nobody is coming to save you. No leader can fix the problems that you're facing. Not a single one. Every single time I said that, and I said, if Danielle Smith doesn't do what she promises to do, we do to her what we did to Jason Kennedy. That's what I said. And every single one of those town halls, I think it's being a little bit misconstrued, to be honest, to say that I supported her. Was she my friend? Absolutely, and that's the worst part of this. She was at my wedding. I really cared about this woman, and not only that, she convinced me, she lied to me. On so many levels, and I'm gonna share a couple of those, maybe later. But the part that I'm most disappointed in is that the moment that they get a leader that will give them a little bit of attention, and there are many members of the board, Peter knows this, that are immediately, they fall in love. And I don't mean in a romantic sense, I just mean they fall in love with her. The premier calls you. The premier texts you. You're important. And as soon as they got involved in politics, the lust for power took over their lives. That is what has happened to a large part of the UCP board, unfortunately. That is what has happened to a large number of TBA activists who suddenly, when they went in a room with Danielle, they get a big hug and a smile. People have fallen in love with the ring of power. And the worst mistake that I made, and this is a mistake that I've reflected on for the last 6 months as I toured the United States with Tucker and watched one of the most beautiful things I've ever seen, which is the American people rising up. And I want to tell you this right now, Trump is going to be the next president of the United States of America. It's happening, it's done. And a lot of people say the cheating. It's now to the point where the cheating isn't enough. They cannot cheat enough to win. He's leading in every single swing state. The pre-voting numbers, he's leading in Nevada, which is supposed to be her strongest state. I can go on and on about this. I'm not going to because I know. I just want to be very clear on this. I failed you guys by not realizing that it is human nature to immediately want to be close to power. So I failed you in the vetting of the board members and the people that I endorsed because I believed in them, because I met them and they were regular citizens, good people. Only one of them was here today. In fact, I have it on very good authority that apparently Marco Cam and I are the unholy trinity because we're here. It's from the president of the board that I endorsed who would not have won if I did not endorse him. But I have good news. Cam and I went through exactly the same thing. Cam and I are very similar people. He was homeschooled, I was homeschooled. We both got into politics way too young. We both became obsessed with power. And
that's not true.
But now we both hate politicians.
Just a full-time typer.
But I just want to, I'll just finish. So the answer is, I wasn't promoting Danielle Smith. I liked her. She was my friend. She promised to do the things that I wanted done. But I was hoping or trying, and it failed, obviously. And I'm going to have to, there's a line from a Rudyard Kipling poem that goes, if you could bear to see the things you gave your life to broken, and bend and build them up again with worn out tools. And my answer to your question is, I don't support Danielle Smith. I don't support politicians. I want you all to realize that if we don't take away the centralization of power, there's no hope for your future. That's what you need to know. There is no leader that can save you. Thank you.
Nadine, you talk a lot about principles and policies. And in 60 seconds or less, what does it mean to be a conservative?
I'm the only woman on the panel. I need more 60 seconds. Before I answer that question, I got a question for all of you. Who's the best person to make the decision about your family's health? Who's the best person to make the decision about your children's education? Congratulations, you're conservatives. So here's the thing, conservatism, and I wanted to write these points down, I'm glad I did because these guys have all stolen them all. Individual liberty, freedom, limited government, personal responsibility. That's a huge one. That's the one that most people don't want to acknowledge, but it's critical to being a conservative. We, as conservatives, assert the fact that we, not government, are in the best position to affect the well-being of our family and ourselves. Right? That's a big difference between a socialist and a conservative. A socialist wants a big government to tell them what to do because they want to avert personal responsibility. That's not what it is to be a conservative. Government's primary role, and Roger spoke on this a little bit tonight, is to actually protect your God-given rights. Because anything the government grants to you is something the government can take away. So we do have to get back to our legal system when it was founded and established on the supremacy of God. And that's what it means to be conservative. We have a moral code that we answer to that is higher than any man. It's a philosophy. And because we have a moral code, we can place trust in people. We can place trust in ourselves as free individuals working within a framework, a rule of law that applies to every individual equally, not to special interest groups, one more than another. This is what has created the most free, the most prosperous, and the strongest economies, the strongest societies like Canada and the United States. It recognizes, to David's point, human limitations. Power corrupts, which is why we never hand our power over to an individual or a small group of individuals. That's why, as conservatives, we like the free market, because there's checks and balances in there. Rather than pursue the utopian ideal that often ignores reality, conservatives like to preserve what works, what I used to call, when I was in industry, best practices, right? Progressives are always chasing the next best thing. It's a social experiment. Without conservatives, we'd be off the cliff by now, and we're happily moving that way as it is. So for me, to be conservative is to embrace freedom. It's to embrace that we make the best decisions for ourselves, and we don't want to be controlled. In fact, we just rather the government get out of our way.
Marty, how do you respond to the commentary that there is no one left to lead Alberta, that we're leaderless, that we somehow can't organize our own future going forward? How do you respond to that? I've seen people respond to some of your tweets this way and tell you that there's nobody that can lead this province.
Well, one of the things I do, when you get into topics that can get somewhat emotional, is you try to make them subjective instead of objective. So you bring up facts, right? And to some of those people, I often I bring back like Mark would. bring it back to a year and a half ago when we were in this situation and we were disappointed with Kinney. And everybody said, well, there's nobody else, it's gotta be Kinney. If we don't re-elect Kinney, then you're just giving it to, at that time, you're giving it to Notley. And so I meet a lot of people who give me that the commentary you said, there's nobody else. I'm like, well, you probably thought that way 2 years ago, but look at what happened. Kenny stepped down, we had a review, and Danielle stepped up. And you're defending Danielle, so obviously there is a person after Kenny. So by the same analysis, no matter what, there is a person after Danielle. I mean, we're a province of 4.5 million people. So
I think she added 200,000 more.
Yeah, there's probably, so, that's the point. I mean, and Nadine talked about it. I mean, we're trying to, you can't fall in love with a politician. And that's one of the things that I'm finding weird right now. Maybe my analytical brain as an engineer thinks too linear. Like, to me, if somebody, if I implement a solution, I'm trying to make a car go faster and I do a change, and I only do one change, by the way, because if I make 2 or 3 changes while I'm trying to make the car go faster, and it goes faster, I don't know what worked. So I make one change, and if it doesn't work, I have absolutely no problem reversing that and making another change. So I approach politics that way. I approach leadership that way, and that's what I tell people, And I tell them this other thing too, this one other weird little thing. Albertans are known in the rest of Canada. People say, wow, you guys are tough on your leaders. I'm like, that's good. I'm fine with that. I mean, if by you telling me that, you're telling me you're weak on your leaders or you're not tough.
Isn't having low expectations part of why we ended up in the COVID mess to begin with?
Absolutely. And then to those same people who say, well, you're tough on your leaders and it must be damaging. I'm like, I don't know. Statistically, Alberta is still the economic powerhouse of the country. I mean, whatever we're doing, people say, well, you're hurting yourself. I'm like, it's not in the stats. I'll challenge the people of New Brunswick, whatever you guys are doing, stop doing that and do something else. I'll end it on that, but I wanted to I want to make one quick comment to Nadine also, on the question of what is conservative. I've taken a lot of flack lately, again, on the immigration issue and saying to people, like, stay out of Alberta, okay? Like, stay out of Alberta. And then I always get this comment, from followers, I'm from Ontario and I'm a conservative. I can't tell you how many times I've interacted with people who've come to Alberta claiming to be conservative, and they learn the hard lesson quickly. And it's amazing to watch them flip. And then I get to go, see, you're not a conservative. Because you just mentioned, like, you're upset that you have to plow your own driveway, or you're upset that you have to pay for your kids to go to the bus to school and stuff like that. Well, that's what small government independence means. And when faced with real conservative values, most people hate.
They find out that Doug Ford probably would get elected in Alberta.
Oh, let's not go there.
Thank you. No, appreciate that. Peter, in your view, what are the most significant threats facing the United Conservative Party, its conservative voter base, and UCP members? What are the most significant threats currently facing us?
That's a good one. But I'm sorry, I've been listening to everybody here. I'm here because I wanted to make it very clear, I do want to see some changes. I'm not here to say we need to replace Danielle. I'm not afraid to have her replaced. I want to be realistic about that. Because you saw the sign up there. This is accountability. What I'm looking for, and first I'll back up to David's statement. We have a board of responsible people, the UCP board. They are passionate board members, every one of them, and they're passionate about the party. Some of them have a different approach to it. They are very close to the leader. Not all of them. We have our discussions. And their concern, as we all have, is this fear of change. If we change Danielle for somebody else, who would that be? I'm not afraid of that change if that is the accountability we need to go through. My position is I'd like to see the needle moved a bit. There's certain things we need. We have a fear of all sorts of unknown things. I'd just like to get rid of that fear. Fiscal responsibility, I think, as talked about a goal, if we just did that, we'd go a long way.
Thank you for that, Peter. Next up, David, starting a grassroots movement like TVA, especially during the height of COVID, you faced a lot of opposition, particularly from the government that you were criticizing at the time, the government. Have you faced that level of opposition under the Danielle Smith government? If so, what did that look like? And was your organization, I guess, welcomed as a continuation of accountability that you called for during COVID to the Jason Kenney government? How has that been perceived by the current government?
Oh, it's worse. I'm under investigation. I was just informed recently, and maybe some more will be revealed about this tonight, but that lawyers were approached to push the Alberta investigation by the Premier's office. So Danielle Smith's Premier's office has been pushing the Elections Alberta investigation against me for telling you guys how your democracy works. I currently have, and if anyone wants to see it, just message me or email me, try to get a hold of me. I currently have in my possession a 380-page document of an investigation claiming that I violated the Election Act 20 times by running Take Back Alberta. Examples of these violations. The t-shirts were the same color as the UCP. Another example of violation. I did not report that I spent money on a Zoom account, which cost about $100 a month. And therefore I was not claiming political advertising. Apparently my Jordan Peterson event was a election advertising by interviewing him on stage and having him speak. They're gloating in the Premier's office about putting me in prison, saying that I'm going to go to prison because I won't give over the donors' names. A court ordered that I had to give over the donor's name. I got a written affidavit from them saying that they would not publish that because I don't want any of you to be harassed. And I handed it over because, frankly, I'm not going to jail for you. That's what I decided after I saw how the people of Alberta treated me after Danielle Smith was elected. I said no. So I found out that the Elections Alberta investigation was prompted and pushed by the Premier's office. But not only that, the Premier's office approached me, and I have all of the evidence for this, the receipts are available, approached me in the spring of 2020, or in the summer of 2023, and offered to make sure I got a job at a college for $120,000 a year if I would shelve Take Back Alberta. This was in the lead up to the annual general meeting when Danielle Smith, you may recall, was running a different slate for the board. She had a different president that she endorsed other than the one that won. And they proceeded to basically, now the Premier has got up in front of the media and said that I need mental health help. There was another Premier, of course, that said that, right? So the truth of the matter is that I'm treated worse by the woman that I opened the door for, we'll call it, allowed to have an opportunity to become Premier, recruited most of her team, built the infrastructure that she used to become Premier.
So sorry, I got to interrupt you,
Yeah.
David. I'm still trying to process what you just said. Jason Kenney never offered you a job to go away?
Oh, in fact, Jason Kenney was really mean, to be honest. He literally just ignored me after
Okay, so Jason Kenney just said, fringe minority.
Well, he called me a lunatic too. And I have the honor, I think maybe the exclusive honor, of being the only person in Alberta who 2 premiers have publicly got in front of the media and said was lunatic. So that's
So under the Smith government, you were offered a $120,000 a year job.
Oh, and I can
to
tell you guys what my
stop.
response was. I couldn't even pay the interest on the loans I took out to run TVA for that.
So they were wanting you to stop a grassroots movement that was born out of accountability. That's what you're telling us.
100%.
That's shocking.
Well, whether it's shocking or not, I mean, I'm not really shocked by Danielle anymore, but I'll add one more thing, and then I'm sure there's other people who want to talk. I don't want to monopolize time, but I want to explain myself because hundreds of people in this province are sending me hate mail, telling me that I'm evil. There's posts about me all over the place claiming that that I am a lunatic because, you know, the Premier said it. I just want to be very clear on why I'm here tonight. It's not because of what she did to me. I wouldn't be here. I don't care. I have all kinds of things I can be doing. I just spent 6 months traveling all over America with the #1 podcaster in the world, right? And I wasn't doing it as like a staffer. I was involved in that, and very proud to have been involved in that. I don't need the Premier to make money. Like I said, she can't afford my interest payments. Apparently she thought $120,000 was enough to make me forfeit all my principles. And I'm honestly not here to criticize it. I'm here to say, if you worship politicians, and this is for the people watching more than you, I know you guys are here, but if you worship them, if you say they're the only ones, if the power that they have and that you feel when you're close to them is what you want from politicians, then you will only end in tyranny. And they are trying to silence me. It isn't just them. People on this stage have tried to silence me.
Let me get involved here, David.
But I won't be silent. And I'm going to continue to speak what I think to be the truth as closely as I possibly can. And if I'm the only one doing it, God wills it.
Okay, moving on. Marco, without getting personal, I don't want to get between you guys right now. Without getting personal, it's, you know, some of the panel members here have had their differences. All conservatives, it seems to be a common theme in conservative politics. We hold ourselves to higher standards than each other, and sometimes it ends in a family feud. But why do you think it's essential for us, despite being diverse organizations and individuals, to unite in support of conservative ideas?
Well, I just want to mention a few things. David's not wrong. You know, the things we've called each other are probably not things we can repeat in this building. So there's been times where there's no love lost between the two of us, but this is way bigger than either of us. So there's that. I also want to quickly mention something in relation to some things David has said, and I will be very critical of the people involved in this. They have attempted to bribe and coerce and pressure the very individuals that were involved in the organization that helped them in their climb or ascension to the Premier's office and to the positions in government. There's no two ways about it. I've been through legal, through contracts or through other lucrative means. They've attempted to bribe me to work against David. And there was a time where, like I said just a couple minutes ago, we were at each other's throats for very legitimate reasons. You know, it takes two to tango. But that this is coming from the Premier and the government and her team that ran off of the support of Take Back Alberta, among others, that's unacceptable. So I'll be very critical of that position. And I've heard, David was mentioning something third party. I've heard it firsthand from the individuals that triggered the Elections Alberta investigation into Take Back Alberta, into David Parker as the CEO, the CEO at that time, as my role as a CFO at that time, all the other captains, etc. So I just wanted to mention that. That's not something that David has just brought up here to throw shade. This is a very real thing. I met with I also received a report, and I met with these individuals in Calgary, these investigators. They said this was the biggest investigation Elections Alberta has ever undertaken. So we have a government led by Premier and her team who has attempted to nail to the wall the grassroots movement and the people in front of that movement or behind that movement, however you want to look at things. In relation to the stage, I mean, this conversation is bigger than us. This conversation is a lot bigger than our personal feelings, and that's why we're sitting beside each other. I mean, I told myself, you want to get me on the other side of the stage with David. This is way bigger than us. And so it's important that regardless of our differences, that we remember what all these panelists have said, all the panels and the panelists, like Nadine just said, what, in relation to the question of what does it mean to be a conservative? The people decide, not government, like it was illustrated before in relation to the Bill of Rights. The government now has the ability to give you the rights, or we've seen them taken away. I can personally testify to our rights, and they may be violated again on January the 9th and 10th, and I'm not going to get too personal. But I've felt government, I've felt the tyranny of government the last 3 years on a very, very personal level. There's many in this crowd that have as well. There's people on the stage that have, to whatever degree they have. So this is bigger than one individual. This is bigger than the massive ego sitting on the stage right now. Sorry, guys. Right? This is way bigger than
I was going to say something nice about you, but now I'm not. Actually, can I just say one quick thing while
We'll finish up with you, Marty. Go ahead.
Yeah, so I mean, just leave it with that. This isn't about us. This is about information. This is about how I started off. Truth, transparency, and accountability. What else is it?
I want to come in.
No, well, I was just going to add to that. Truth, like the fact that we can disagree on stage here. I mean, we've had drinks together. We can debate stuff. We're not always on the same page, but yeah. and that's what we are. That's what makes conservatives different. We will hold each other. Like if we're not willing to hold each other accountable, how can we hold politicians and others accountable? So, you know, and I tell that to people. Actually, I'll tell you a quick story. I told my wife when I met her a long time ago, I said, once in a while, you're going to have to say, Marty, you're starting to believe your own bullshit. And so once in a while, Marty gets on a little rant at home, and she'll just go, now she doesn't even say the words, she just looks at me, and that's my cue. So yeah.
Well, I want to thank all the panelists here tonight, and there's been a lot of candid conversation, a lot of great questions, and we had one gentleman on the stage who did go to jail briefly for fighting for freedom. Former MLA Rick Strandman, who I absolutely love and respect, and you know, Marco, in your next chapter. Hopefully, after that chapter is over, we'll have you back up on the stage at some point in time to hear more perspective on.
Can't wait to tell you all about it.
Where, you know, standing up for freedom doesn't come without a price. It never does. And I know there's several other vets in the audience tonight. And, I chose to serve south of the border with two other Alberta boys. But service comes in different forms, and being in a room like this, discussing accountability and talking about what that means and how to hold your leaders in government accountable, that is a sacrifice as well. It doesn't come without a cost. So I want to thank each and every one of you tonight for showing up, having your voice heard, continue to fight for truth and justice. We may not always agree. In fact, I know we probably don't agree on every issue, but that's okay. That's what makes us conservative. And fighting for that and speaking up and making sure that our leaders are held to the highest standard is what this is all about. So thank you again for showing up tonight.
Thank you to Cam for organizing all of this. Thank you, Cam.
Ladies and gentlemen, our final panel, and a hand to every panelist that we've had here today. Thank you. Folks, a big thank you as well to the Jason Levine Show, who has been live streaming this all day. Our flawless audiovisual team here today.
We'll be doing some interviews shortly.
Folks. If you want to engage with some of the panelists, they'll be going to the casino and resorts. Otherwise, get home safe.
We're going to interview.
Good night.
We're going to interview some of the panelists right away here. Hey everybody, thanks for tuning in. We're going to interview some of the panelists right away, so stay tuned. We're going to interview them shortly.
Hey, Benita, how's it going? How's it going, Benita? Hey, how's it going?
The Jason Levine Show set up over there. I'm still live. I'm live via freedomcalendar.net.
Yeah.
Freedomcalendar.net. Now, yeah, Jason's here, so's his wife. Freedomcalendar.net now has a YouTube channel. So when possible, we go live out of that. Oh yeah, I do what I can to help out Canada. So I've got a couple of interviews lined up. I'll be interviewing Marco for sure, John O'Brien, and hopefully some others. So yeah, hopefully this goes smoothly. Let's see what
Hey,
we
Benita.
can do here.
Hey, Benita, how's it going?
Hey Max, can you hear me clearly? I've got the microphone hooked up
Yep.
now.
Yep. That was amazing. Look, I'm broadcasting for
Just
3
text me,
hours
Max,
straight.
please.
Oh, okay. Just a second. Picking up the. Oh my goodness, where are you? You can join us on the meeting, right? Oh, you got, there's, what's this gentleman there already? Kerry Lambert. Kerry Lambert over there. I recognize this guy over there. That was amazing. Oh.
Is my microphone working clearly?
Oh my goodness.
All right.
Just give me 1 second.
Okay.
Yes. Yes. I met you at lunch.
Yeah. Peter.
I appreciate that very much.
Peter, can I interview you on whatever you want? Talk about whatever you want. Just what it's like to express views that are unpopular, but not having the whole system anyway. Is that okay? Okay. Is that okay? Yeah. Okay. I'm gonna get you to face right there. Just back up so I can frame you in. Oh, you're
Hey.
taller than I'm accustomed to. There we go. Got a little glare behind us. So let's turn this way. Still got glare. Sorry. Let's do it this way. That's a little bit better. Okay, thank you. So just stay right where you are. I'm going to come in next to you. Okay, perfect. And it's white, right?
White.
Okay. And you're with the South or Calgary?
I'm Calgary.
Calgary, yeah,
Calgary
director.
Regional Director.
Okay, perfect. All right, let's do this. Hi, everyone. I'm Benita.
Hey.
One of the helpers at freedomcalendar.net, and I'm here with Peter Whitehead, and he serves on the United Conservative Party board, and he is one of the Calgary directors. Peter, what is it that
I'm just gonna crank the.
why did you present at today's conference?
Well, you know, it's an interesting story. When it's all developed in the last 2 years, listening to a lot of people say, oh, 1905, all these other people, TVA, they're a problem. The reality is, they aren't. They ask everybody to get involved. They don't tell you how to vote. They keep pushing, get involved. I'm here because I felt this is something I want to be part of. Truth is always going to make it good.
Thank you. Now, some of the topics talked about today, there's various items of concern, and what I'm sensing from all the presenters is they're hopeful this government will be able to address these matters. And some of them are willing to work, shall we say, if the government isn't ready to address items of concern. When it comes to bringing up concerns, but the concerns are unpopular, do you have any suggestions for someone to do that? Let's say they serve on a board somewhere where they're trying to engage with their elected representative. What's one of the suggestions you have for bringing up a concern that might be unpopular in the moment?
You know what? I started off with the first one. Get involved. If you want to see change, go get involved with constituencies. Get involved to the point where you make changes happen. If your CA president is pushing you back and won't allow you to, you make some changes there. We've seen some miracles happen in this province over the last 2 years. It's only going to get better. I have a lot of faith in. You see this button? I am Alberta. The reality is we are all in this together. Let's hope so.
See you at the AGM. Hi, Max. Did that come through clearly? Can you text me a response, please?
It's weird. I always say, then you know how you will die for. And
So how many people there are up there, Benita? Probably 100, 150 over there, right? Yeah, I can say probably 100 people, 150 people there, easily. So that was a good meeting. Yeah, that's a good meeting. Lots of good people, lots of good talk. That's good. That's very good.
No, I didn't get to see them. Yes. Lobbying group. No. So you're going to be there at the AGM? Oh, yeah. All right, well, let's. Good. Do it. Maybe I'll go find it. I didn't know boss. Yeah. We'll see you there then. Awesome.
Hey.
Can I have 2 minutes with you? It won't take long.
Hey, Benita, I heard the sound is a little slow.
Ladies and gentlemen, I'm here in Red Deer at the event. It's about accountability.
A bit
What
low.
a terrific event has taken place. We're going to try and snag some of the panelists here to say a few words to thank you so much for tuning in. One of the things we've requested is that you share out this broadcast. freedomcalendar.net listeners
Yep.
that are interested in tuning into. So make sure you check the website regularly. Freedom
Probably
Calendar.
RFK for the weather.
Various events in there. And now, of course, there's the Freedom Calendar podcast. So you want to make sure you're tuning right before hearing about the events and the different things going on. FreedomCalendar.net will also have a presence at the upcoming UCP AGM, also in Red Deer.
Yeah, I will
And
be
that's
there.
happening November 1st and November 2nd. There is a lot going on in politics right now, and I want to appreciate it. Personally, I'm actually headed to the Alberta Legislature tomorrow, and I'll be sitting in session tomorrow while legislation is being introduced, and I think it's going to be an exciting week. I'm part of a group now called Parents and Kids Together, and this group has a special rally coming up on November 9th in support of the legislation that's being introduced this year.
Well, you know,
that has to do with protecting children. So you can tune in to legislative session by going to the Alberta government website. I'm not allowed to record, but I'm sitting in the gallery. But you can tune in live via the Alberta government's website.
Yeah, but
so that's something to think about. Just give me one more moment here.
Are you exactly like your parents?
Oh, come on. That's my niece. I better answer that for her.
It's not like he's hiding.
There's a lot of people in there.
And as Putin pointed out,
3 hours streaming right up.
Just doing a sound check here.
Hey.
Here's sound just without the microphone.
I think it's better now.
Better, Max? Send me a text.
You know, at the end of the day, I'm controlled up, right? So you're gonna believe that everyone that you're gonna get paid. Don't look at what people say, and don't look at what people say about people. Look at what people do. That's it. And I think when you look at people like that, that's not controlled opposition. Right? That is a man who didn't need to.
Hey, David. Oh, that's David over there. Lord, that's fantastic.
All right, we got 3 more people in 9 years, and then I'll come do this, and then
I just need 1 minute. That's all I need. Oh, he's got people he's got to chat with. Okay, let's catch someone else. Sorry about that, guys. Let's see who
That
else
happens all the time. We're in a meeting. Always get on the time where we're trying to do social every time. By the
way,
Is
if
it,
you're planning an event, this is the Legacy Center in Red Deer. And the Legacy Center is just terrific. I like the sound in this facility, even better than the facility that I visited last time I was in Red Deer. So let's see who else we can catch here. Some people have already left.
Yeah, all is
Jason
good.
Levine is here from the Levine Show. And he was live, by the way, during the event. So if you want to watch the recording, you can tune in to the Levine Show. So John Hilton O'Brien is here from Parents for Choice in Education. And
they're doing to do
he
a
wasn't one of the
fundraising.
panelists today,
Oh.
but he is here supporting the event, and I think we should find out why. What brings them here today?
Also, there's going to be a town hall and a fundraiser event on October 22nd. For those who are in St. Albert, just going to post the link here. That's going to look for that specific. That's going to be on November the 22nd, I believe. I'm just going to look at the. Hey.
And you're here obviously representing Parents for Choice in Education. So
wherever people gather, we like to hear and come and chat.
Well, come over here a little bit so everyone can see you. This is John Hilton O'Brien with Parents for Choice. Parents for Choice in Education, ladies and gentlemen. And he's here at this event. Why? What brings you here?
There was a gathering of Albertans who are interested in things like parental choice in education. Like a pretty good place for it.
And so, did any of the messages on the stage particularly resonate with you?
they mostly didn't apply so much to education, but there were some remarks about people's concerns about how much power and influence some of our bureaucracy have over what really should be decisions made by families. And I think they're correct to question that. It's a long-running concern. It's been a concern for more years than I can remember. And we're still trying to sort that out.
Thank you, John, and thank you for your presence here. Your website is parentchoice.ca, is that correct? Okay, and you're going to have a presence at the UCP AGM as well, is that right?
We will have a table at the AGM. We're also going to have a hospitality suite at one of the hotels for the convention.
Oh.
And after the convention, we're going to be taking part in a rally with a group called Parents and Kids Together. And we're going to be encouraging Premier Smith to stick to her guns on the parental choice legislation that she's coming up with.
So November 9th rally, actually I'm involved in that as well. We're planning to start at 1 p.m. It'll go till 3 p.m., maybe even 4 p.m. You're going to deliver a speech at that rally, aren't you?
Right. I think it will be a worthwhile event to attend.
Terrific. Parentsandkidstogether.ca is the website to promote that rally. And any other thoughts about parents for choice in education?
Well, if you happen to subscribe to the Western Standard, there's a column that came out today, a reflection on the election that was just done in New Brunswick this past week that I wrote and was published today. So please go read it.
Wonderful. Okay, thanks for that time, John. Really appreciate it. Let's see if we can catch another panelist here. So, can I have some time with you? Yeah? Okay, perfect. We're going to catch another panelist. Yeah, it's live at freedomcalendar.net. Yes, so we're going to have another panelist. Thank you all so much for your tuning in and your patience with all of this. I'll go get my next panel. Our next panelist is one of the lawyers that spoke earlier today.
So, what do you want me to do?
Right there, I'll just get you to introduce yourself. And maybe highlight some of the highlights of what you shared. Yeah, I'll be open to you. Okay, all right. Ladies and gentlemen, this gentleman was one of the panelists today. He was here as part of the legal panel. Thank you for that. Would you please introduce yourself to our viewers, because I think they're unfamiliar with you.
Hi, my name is Roger Song. I'm a sole practitioner in Calgary, and also I'm the executive director of Council of Alberta Lawyers. I'm so pleased to be here with the audience today.
Thank you. And you spent a good amount of time on the stage there sharing some thoughts with us. So when you look at all the changes that need to be made, there's so many changes that need to be made. It's almost overwhelming.
Right.
If you could only pick one or two that could be made in the coming months, maybe it's some new legislation that's created, what would you suggest needs to be pursued immediately?
So the immediate way is to fix our legislation, to amend our legislation to protect and safeguard our liberty, our freedom, our rights.
So do you support the proposed Bill of Rights by the Black Hats Group? Is that something you've read?
I just read the news, but I haven't read the text of the bill itself, but I like the idea.
Okay. Well, I think we're on the same team here. Actually, I really like what the Black Hats are proposing for strengthening the Alberta Bill of Rights, and so I might even wear a black hat to the UCP AGM. That's how much I like it. Will you be at the UCP AGM?
Yes, I will.
Yes, you will. And are you open to people that are interested in discussing law? Are you somewhat available for that?
Yes.
Yes? Okay, thank you so much. All right. Thanks for sharing that with us. And thank you for being a panelist today. Sorry about that. Okay. We're going to head out and try to find some more to interview. Let me see if I can find a better spot here. Lots of people have already left because it's getting so late. So just hang tough, guys. I'll find someone else to interview in a few moments.
I don't know how you feel about that. Yeah, but just getting that worldwide done. They've been checking for
Okay.
It's all right there.
All right.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, we've got David Parker from Take Back Alberta.
Hey.
And David, my main question to you is, tell us about the importance of conservatives coming together when they disagree and having a discussion.
Well, I mean, I don't think it's just conservatives. I think that if you can't talk to people, then now we've got into a place where we're censoring people's speech, right? And that's what the left is. That's what the left is doing right now in America, and a lot more, and Canada to a huge degree. Is there's hate speech. You're not allowed to say things. You're not allowed to talk about things. Anybody who says an opinion that's outside of the mainstream has now become, a pariah, whatever. And the problem that is happening isn't just a conservative problem, it's a societal problem. And it's cancel culture. Like, we've all seen it. Now the right's doing it, right? The right is really good at it. It's like, we've got a whole bunch of people that are apparently World Economic Forum in the freedom movement. Everyone's trying to cancel one another. You might have heard that I've been canceled many, many times. There's people that have been saying that TVA is dead, that I'm gone, that I won't be able to do anything anymore. And, at the end of the day, it's up to you as individuals to continue to say what you believe to be true. And I actually disagree a little bit with the premise of your question, Benita, because I don't think it's about uniting. I think it's about going as hard as you can towards truth. And the people that walk along that road with you, those are the people you want to walk with. But if there's people, I'm not going to unite with someone who believes a lie and says lies. I'm not going to get behind someone who lies. And if that means that I'm alone and there's nobody to unite with, that's fine. So in a sense, I would say that the only way we can have unity is around reality and truth. So if you're pursuing truth, you're going to find the people on that path. I found many of them, including you, Benita, along the path of Take Back Alberta, where we spoke the truth about what was going to happen in the election if they didn't work and try to take back their democracy. And you did a great job on that. I'm really thankful for the work that you did. But at the end of the day, I don't actually think it's about unity. I think it's about pursuing the truth, even when you're alone.
Okay. So going forward, David, after the next few weeks, obviously, is going to be very busy for people. But my understanding is Take Back Alberta has something called the Centurion Program. And the Centurion Program is about transforming school boards across Alberta on October 20th of 2025. So is that still going forward? Do you have some presentations about that coming up? What's happening?
Yes, that will be going forward. I'm working on the details of it. We're obviously in the middle of a huge AGM, the largest political event in Canadian history, a political paid meeting, and it's actually a political meeting. It's important to distinguish. Obviously, Pierre's had lots of people in rooms, and there have been rallies with more people. This is not a political rally. It's a political meeting. It is the members of a party gathering together to make decisions. And there's never been this many members of a party gathering at an annual general meeting in Canadian history. So I'm super proud of people like Benita, people like Mitch. I can list thousands of names of people, even people like Marco, even people like Nadine. Like, people think that if people are coming that they disagree with, that's a bad thing. No, that's a great thing. That means we're going to be able to hash it out. We're going to have people having arguments, and frankly, we're going to be holding politicians accountable. There's nothing that a politician, including Danielle Smith, is more afraid of than that many people showing up in a room, because you can't control that many people. So, super happy for it.
Thank you very much, David. Okay, thank you so much. David Parker, ladies and gentlemen, from Take Back Alberta. So I'm Benita Peterson, one of the helpers at freedomcalendar.net, and there's still a few panelists here, and other interesting people as well. So I'm going to see about doing a few more interviews. Please stay tuned. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, speaking of interesting people, we have Alex Van Kirk. You might be familiar with him. Some people call it the Coutts Trio, going through some court stuff. Alex, please share with our viewers at freedomcalendar.net what's happening right now.
Oh, so we had an awesome event tonight here. Dr. Macas, Dr. Shoemaker, some good panelists, some lawyers. Man, what an information night tonight was. No regrets. Drove 4 hours to get here. I would do it again tomorrow. It's always good to hear these good speakers telling the truth, and that's what needs to keep getting told to everybody and all Albertans. Albertans need to know what the truth is, what was allowed to have happened in their province, in our country, in the world, and that needs to be exposed, and more people need to come and listen to this and follow him. Follow Dr. Macas online. Jason Levine, I believe, had a live stream. Follow his link. This is the truth, and it's coming out. So definitely needs to be out there. And I thought it was awesome. So.
Okay, thank you. Are you game to share with us what you were charged with, what the outcome was in court, and then what's the next step?
Yes, so we were charged with mischief over 5,000, which I don't know why they charged us with that. There was no mischief caused, there was no damage over 5,000. They were allowed to have used the value of the pavement in Coutts, of the Coutts Highway itself, for the $5,000 value. But anyways, we were found guilty by jury, which is pretty easy to be found guilty. I think my dog would have been found guilty if he was there. So our next step is sentencing January 9th and 10th. The 9th will be the sentencing hearing, and the 10th will be the sentencing. Not feeling real good. I mean, part of me wants to say it's going to be okay, but the other side of me knows what's happening in our world, in our society, and they want to make a statement, and I think they want to set a heavy sentiment on us so that deter anybody from future protests or from standing up against government, and that's what we did. We stood up against tyranny, and that's what I feel they want to make an example of us.
So if people want to show support for the Coutts Trio, what's the best places to go? A website, a Facebook page?
So there is the Freedom Hub Lethbridge is a big supporter of us, and I know there's another third annual renewal coming up in Lethbridge at the Ben Walter shop. So they'll be having the third annual follow-up barbecue on January 25th. And then, we hope to be there, but I guess no guarantees because January 10th is our sentencing. So we might not be at January 25th, third annual, I guess what you call that, reunion. But maybe we will be. Who knows what happens.
Well, you know what, Alex? I know that there are a lot of people praying for you. So keep up the strength, keep up the spirit, and sometimes prayers are answered and miracles happen.
Absolutely.
So here's a big hug.
Thank you, Benita.
Thank you for being one of our heroes. Thank you. That's one of our heroes, Alex Van Kirk, ladies and gentlemen. So the next person we're going to interview now is Art Hanger. So Art Hanger, I'm going to get you to stand right here, and I'm going to get you to look right here. And there's some people that don't know who you are. Could you please introduce yourself?
Yes, Art Hanger. I'm a former police officer. I'm a true blue Albertan, I'll say that much. And I'm proud of it. I born and raised in this province, grew up in the farm. My family contributed much over the decades from just after it became a province. And I really enjoy living in this province. I think it has the potential to be the freest province in the country. I think it's still freer than others, but we're losing that. So served in the as a police officer for 23 years. And now, immediately after that, 15 years in in Ottawa as a member of Parliament for Calgary Northeast. And after my stint there for 15 years, I came back thinking it was close to retirement. COVID hit. And I said, what am I doing sitting here in my rocking chair on my patio when the world and this province is under threat? I got active, and now I remain active even as I age, and I don't think there's time to just sit around and do nothing, so I'm involved.
Art, I'm so grateful you're involved, and this isn't the first conference I met you at. You've been involved for quite some time. Now, Alberta legislative session has begun, and there's going to be legislation introduced and then discussed and then passed. So when you look at the next few weeks from now till December 5th, what's a piece of legislation that you would like to see introduced, discussed, and then passed before December 5th?
Well, I don't think there's anything that the Premier or the government is going to do that I would like to see on that agenda, but I'd like to see them pass legislation that would diminish the size of government dramatically, and especially just gut AHS, who has become a corporation out of control. But the advantage of being in Alberta now is becoming slimmer all the time. Our energy industry, with the potential of this carbon capture nonsense, which is a lie, should be just scrubbed from the books. There should be no plan to bring about any kind of carbon capture initiatives. And I just think that there's a growing need more and more to look for true conservative values. We need true conservative values. You know, just not just a smaller government, but you know, everyone talks about rights. You know, these are God-given rights. The only time and only legislation that should exist is what God has given us, the government should protect. We already have the rights. The government should just protect what we already have, not to give them to us. They're not giving us anything. And so to look at it from that point of view, I disagree with the premise that the government can give us rights. They don't. We have them already. Protect them, please. So, and that includes freedom of speech, of worship, of just being able to go out and try something different, to start a business or to fail at that business too. We don't need government control to do those things. So these are just some of the things that I believe that were expressed in this room here tonight. And so I enjoy listening to people with other opinions. That is freedom of speech. You don't have to call somebody names because they might have a different opinion than you might. So that's what I see Alberta as being what it was, but it's changing. And I don't want to see those changes entrenched into legislation that Alberta is going to be giving me something I already haven't. So that's a piece of legislation. Diminish the size of the government. Get out of our classrooms. Let us be able to speak freely and just enjoy our life here. That's what it's all about.
Well, Art, I just want to express my own personal thanks for your involvement. I am so glad that although you were retired and pretty comfortable, that you came out of retirement to help this movement. So thank you. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Okay, I appreciate you, and I'm sure I'll see you at more meetings and events in the future.
You could, as long as I'm able to.
Super duper. Okay, so we're going to interview this next fella, and he's going to share with us his thoughts about attending today's event. So you can introduce yourself, talk a little bit about your Facebook page, etc., and share your impressions of the event.
Alberta Stronger, that's me. I don't know. I really was happy I came here. I filmed the whole thing. I really wanted to speak to see what Nadine Rowan had to say about the 5 committee. There's a lot of not so great words being said, a lot of rhetoric around that established entity, whatever you want to call it. And I think she cleared up the air pretty good there. She was talking about everybody's scared of who's going to come after Danielle. And if you don't like Danielle, then it's the Nenshi person against the Conservatives or whatever. Right? So, but it's not what they're about. I mean, they're just like the big sign behind them said that they're about accountability, and that's what every single one of them are talking about. I mean, look at David Parker. I mean, wow. He's a big chunk of why they got to where they are, right, as a government. So, and he's here to 1905 sponsored festivities, right, or whatever, the town hall. So, and there goes Kelly Lambert for the APP. Just had a talk with him. Things going on good there, I guess. Carrie, you want to say something? No? As good as Alberta's shirt on. That's awesome. Anyway, I'm glad I came. I got to get it on my phone. Unfortunately, it's a piece of crap. I got a new one yesterday. I couldn't get it going in time to change it out. So that's kind of where the filming of mine is kind of crappy. But hopefully I got the audio. I got a new phone.
Well, it's also at freedomcalendar.net. It's on the new YouTube channel, freedomcalendar.net, and the Levine Show, also recorded the evening. So thank you, Todd, from Stronger Together. Sure. Yeah, you can.
Anyways, but it's not Alberta Stronger. So anyways, thanks, guys. Bye.
Thank you for tuning in. Okay, everybody, I'm Benita Peterson. A lot of people have left now. Anybody else want to be interviewed as an attendee?
No.
You're heading out, are you?
I think we first met at the Whistle Stop.
Oh, we probably did meet at the Whistle Stop. That was quite a day. Yes, it was. Are you okay for a minute? Looks like I'm trying to catch more people.
Sorry.
Thank you, Marco. This is one of my favorites. You're a hero, and you know that. You probably get told that all the time.
Just an ordinary guy.
Marco, what would you like to share about today and about what was accomplished here? This discussion.
Well, I think there was some very hard-hitting truths that were revealed on certain panels. Listening to Dr. Makis and his vivid and then speedy, explanation of what's really going on in AHS and what government needs to do. It was a thrill. It was sitting beside somebody who said, I could listen to this all night long. So that was great. The legislative portion of it, I missed some of it, but I know all 3 gentlemen very well. Phenomenal individuals with a ton of experience. In the legal portion, also individuals I know, individuals who have been involved under their respective oaths in significant legal action across the province. So wonderful to have those panelists as well. And then our closing panel. I was somebody who built that panel and helped promote and push it and get on stage with individuals that I've had significant disagreements with. Was refreshing, to say the least. And like I said before, this is much bigger than the panelists. Obviously, I'm talking about David and myself. It's much bigger than our disagreements and our vivid relationship. It is about what's really happening out there and how we have serious, powerful individuals in government and outside of government who are looking to extinguish the grassroots. Everything about it, they utilize the grassroots, the people to get to where they are. But when it comes to delivering on the promises and the commitments of those respective campaigns, there's only one group that can ensure that accountability is maintained, or that accountability that's owed is delivered on, and that is the grassroots. And eliminate that, and you have a clear path to whatever you want to do. So I understand what these people want to do. I understand what they've attempted to do, and to some degree, there's been a margin of success. But it was very refreshing for David and myself to sit there and to share our experiences, regardless of what your views are on David, regardless of what you think of me. You know, probably justified, probably accurate. But the reality is that we have a very powerful force in government who is looking to extinguish truth, transparency, and accountability.
And we're not going to let that happen, are we?
No, we're not.
In fact, we're getting more powerful.
Absolutely, absolutely. That's what today was. It was an accountability session. Phenomenal turnout, considering we only put this together in 2-3 weeks. So phenomenal turnout. Would we have loved to have 50, 60 more? Of course. But very happy with the turnout. Happy with the information. Definitely a strong showing online. I want to thank everybody who tuned in online as well. And see you at the AGM this weekend.
See you at the AGM. Now, legislative session has begun, and it goes until December 5th. Then it closes down until the next legislative session. So when you think of legislation that needs to be introduced, discussed, and passed, what's one piece of legislation you'd like to see happen? The sooner the better.
Well, I mean, I understand legislation, how it makes its way to the floor. First reading, second reading, committee, and then becomes certified. It becomes a bill, or it becomes law, or whatever they want to use. I don't know what I'm talking about when it comes to the terminology. But the biggest thing with legislation is, and even the Bill of Rights, it's not the piece of paper. It's the will and the political will to implement this, to put it out into the public, to enforce it among respective ministries, among respective regulatory bodies, etc. I mean, there's so much legislation on a shelf somewhere that would probably change significant portions of society if they would actually have the political will to implement it. So I appreciate the goodwill and at times posturing that happens in Edmonton. But if there isn't an appetite to implement what becomes law and to uphold law and to uphold the rights of people, I mean, rights that shouldn't be given to us by government, it makes no sense at all. That to me is a bigger problem than a particular piece of legislation that feels good, but if it isn't utilized and implemented by government, what's the point? I think we have a lot of bigger issues in government, fiscal responsibility, among others. We got a lot of critical issues in this province that could use attention outside of the legislative session.
Thank you.
Perfect.
Anything else to add?
No, thanks for having me. Thanks for being here, Benita. It's always good to see you. And I look forward to seeing many of you guys at the AGM this Friday, Saturday.
We'll be there.
Perfect.
We'll
Have
be
a good
there.
night.
Thank you. You as well. Thank you.
Sorry, guys.
Ladies and gentlemen, I'm Benita Peterson, one of the helpers at freedomcalendar.net. Thank you again so much for tuning in. One of the ways you can help with the momentum is to share out this broadcast. Visit freedomcalendar.net on a regular basis so that you can find out about upcoming events that would interest you. And of course, regularly visit the YouTube channel of freedomcalendar.net. Thanks again for tuning in. Have a great night, everyone. And God bless. We're all done, Max. The place is empty. I stayed till the very end. Hope you enjoyed all of that.